struggling to breathe in the cold weather. My heart hurt for her, a woman of color with mental health issues stuck in Montana in the dead of winter. My husband and I decided to obtain a hotel room for her and her dog for 2 weeks. We paid out of pocket for this, along with the $100 we spent on her toiletries, food, and dog food. In May of 23, I had a mother message me via Facebook that she had left an abusive relationship with just the clothes on her back. She was at the Abbey shelter and needed clothing for her children but had no money. Without hesitation, I invited her to stop into my store and pick out whatever she needed at no charge. Those are just examples of how I have personally helped those less fortunate in my community without recognition and without a tax write-off. But because I don't want to see adult men and women in various forms of undress, generally intoxicated by drugs or alcohol, yelling at passerbys, pedestrians, defecating behind and in front of my building, throwing trash and drug paraphernalia steps away from my front door that small children use, I am somehow a person who thinks that anyone that has fallen on hard times should be thrown away like trash. This couldn't be further from the truth, but is the exact reason why you are seeing a decline in the compassion shown by our community for the homeless, why people are just fed up. You vilify us when you don't know our heart. You don't know what we have done for the people we see in need. I cannot speak for anyone else, but based on the numerous conversations I have had with local business owners and homeowners in that area, we all feel the same. Since the seasonal closing of the warming center, I have been dealing with a gentleman who was sleeping behind our building. I spoke with another business owner in our complex who was aware and provided me with insight on this situation. The gentleman was suffering from bipolar disorder as well as schizophrenia. He had alienated his family, his friends, and the only thing he had in his corner was the love of his mother, a woman who knew she was enabling but couldn't say no. She told me that she was working to get him into mental health facility and that if she found him a bed and he refused to go, that would be the final straw for her. Eldon frequents the warming center each week to shower and do whatever it is that he needs there. Based on what the warming center says, all clients must participate in community services, as the warming center should only be used as a stepping stone to better their lives. But this example shows that this isn't happening. So we have to ask ourselves, at what point do you stop forcing help on those that won't help themselves? We don't need a bigger warming center. What we need is a mental health facility that can house these individuals, getting them the help they need to recover from addiction, addressing the root cause of that addiction, and guiding them into providing a life for themselves and becoming productive members of society. The warming center is enabling those that want to live a vagrant lifestyle with no regard for those around them, giving them shelter, food, and supplies to be able to continue in their throes of addiction. I'm asking you to please consider the safety and livelihoods of those in the community. I have worked hard to grow a woman-owned small business. Please don't let the life choices of others take that away from me. Please consider alternative locations to the warming center, away from residential homes, retail establishments, and schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori, and I live just off of Liberty also. And with the grace of God, I have not suffered what other people have talked about. I don't see any of the homeless, and I don't see any needles in the trash. And I have walked every night since the last meeting we had, I believe last month, to look for homeless, to look for trash, and found none. So I'm not sure what that's about, and I can't address this. What I would like to address is I'm begging this group that before they upset our community in the future, before they make it divisive more so than it's ever been, to please seek expert advice before they start throwing out opinions and agendas. Please go to some leadership classes, go to a conference, do something, and talk how to solve community issues in an effective way. I agree with the first person that this is not going to stop homelessness. I said before, that's as silly as thinking if you shut down AA meetings, there's not going to be any addicts and alcoholics. It just doesn't work that way. So please consider what you do, what you say divides this community, angers this community, makes it worse and harder, increases the stress for everybody when you start throwing out ideas without getting expert advice. And that's the, maybe you guys have so far, but you hadn't as of the last meeting. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rod Tinseth. I've been here before, stood up here. One thing I'd like to point out, nothing against your information lately, but the place has basically been closed since the last meeting, so you haven't had people wandering around the warming shelter. It is apparently open a few hours, like 3 days a week for showers and that kind of thing, but you don't see a lot going on. And again, I'm going to reiterate when I was here before to say I've been in my location literally kitty corner across the street, but I'm over 150 feet away. But there was never, I've never seen a homeless person wandering around the fairgrounds and all that stuff until this opened. The first year, every morning I'd go to work, I would be throwing away hardened Mike's lemonades off the top of my garbage can in the morning, little bottles of stuff underneath the bushes. Again, I have gotten rid of my back steps. I've had to cover all my outlets. I can't put my flags out. My poles get stolen. And I guess part of this was going to be it would not affect the neighborhood, is what we were all told. Also told that we didn't have an opinion because I was over 150 feet away, which I believe city manager has commented at the last meeting I was at that there really isn't a 150-foot thing, I guess, as far as that goes. With the potential expansion up to what, like 200 people or whatever's going to go on, and right now we're talking 60. We've had evidence that people are dropping people off in Kalispell because of this. And one of the comments before, where's Whitefish, where's Columbia Falls, where are all these things? And most of the people that come up here have to say volunteers or on the board for the warming shelter that are in favor of it. Find me a neighbor or somebody that lives next to it that is happy with this. I don't think you'll find one. And, you know, I guess I don't know what else, but again, it's changed my life. It's changed how I run my office. And I am worried I am in my 60s. I hope to retire someday. And I guarantee that my property is not going to be worth what it should be, especially if this thing gets expanded, which to my understanding it shouldn't be, but you know, and I'll leave it at that. And if we got a lot of people that live out of town and supporting it, set up a tent city on your property. You know, get it out of my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. That was a great segue. I'm Roger Hopkins. I live in Columbia Falls. I'm the former mayor, however, of Kalispell. If you need proof, you can look at the pictures back on the wall. You won't recognize me then as I am today. I moved from this great, and forgive me, I am not very good 34 years later at extemporaneous commentary, so I'm going to read a statement. I moved from this great city not because I wanted to, but because becoming Columbia Falls city manager, the council there, required that I live in Columbia Falls. And just a quick sidebar that you might find amusing. One of my critics before I left the city of Columbia Falls said, "Don't bring your big city ways from Kalispell to Columbia Falls." Ironically, here we are today. Columbia Falls is probably about the size of Kalispell when I was mayor. I was unable to attend last night's hearing, so I don't know if anyone who is currently experiencing homelessness attended or spoke. Nor do I know if there are any unhoused neighbors here tonight. But what I am fairly certain of is this: whether we are here to support the warming center or oppose its continued operation, every one of us who are here you, myself included, and the majority of us in the audience are blessed. We will leave this meeting to go home, but which for any number of unfortunate occurrences in our lives, we could be without. I humbly suggest that the Warming Center is not creating the concerns expressed by the center's neighbors and Kalispell citizens. Rather, I view the center as part of the solution. I believe revoking its CUP will cause more problems. And I say this in due respect to the woman, the small business owner, and her legitimate concerns. When I left the Valley about 20 years ago, I went to work for the Small Business Administration. The trouble and difficulty of running a small business can only be compounded by the experiences that she's experiencing, and I sympathize with you. And I am fully sympathetic with the center's neighbors and their concerns with the homeless situation. I lived in Tacoma, Washington for several years and owned a home within a mile from the Tacoma Rescue Center. There was also a large homeless encampment even closer to my house. I experienced trespassing, broken car windows, and theft. Neighbors had their homes broken into. Fortunately, the Tacoma City Council initiated a law enforcement-backed neighborhood watch program and deployed public works and social services resources to disband the camps. I can't say with any certainty that the deployment of these resources eliminated the problem. I left Tacoma to return to Montana and Columbia Falls shortly thereafter. But I can say, before I left, my neighborhood was a lot quieter and a lot safer. I hope this conversation and focus on the Warming Center will lead to a county and community-wide deployment of resources and political will to address the problem. Our county commissioners should be taking the lead and initiate collaboration with the governments of Kalispell, Whitefish, Columbia Falls. It's a problem across Montana and across the nation. And I encourage anyone who is blessed with a home today, here tonight, to ask their city, county, state, and national political leaders their positions, their solutions that they propose to the homeless problem that is plaguing our nation. In the meantime, I urge the council to not revoke the CUP.
Thank you, Mayor. I had to get that in. When I see a former mayor, I have to acknowledge the mayor. So.
Good evening, neighbors, members of the council, Mayor Johnson. Thank you all for your time and consistent work on this conversation. My name is Aspen Chupa. I live on Main Street. I consider myself a neighbor with our houseless neighbors here in the Valley. And I'm supportive of the FWC maintaining their conditional use permit due to the invaluable service they provide this community. Their existence does not encourage houselessness in this community. Larger systems and circumstances we have little control over cause homelessness. But what we can control as a city council and as our own community is our reaction to our houseless neighbors and these people who are on the short end of the crisis we find ourselves in. The Flathead Warming Shelter provides the bare minimum bed to sleep in where you won't freeze to death, and limited use of laundry machines and showers so one can show up to work decently, and resources to help encourage employment and housing. This is what they provide. And I understand the people are affected in this area, but this is the last resource for anyone using it. Don't abandon your neighbors. When I think of the community I want to live in, I see people who show up for their neighbors. Please vote in favor of continuing the conditional use permit.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, council. My name is Marshall Taylor, and I live on 5th Avenue West North. My family has lived on 5th Avenue for the last 31 years. And I can tell you, as someone who's lived in the neighborhood of the shelter and not atop a mountain above Whitefish Lake, that the shelter has had a direct negative impact on the health, safety, or comfort of persons living or working in the area. Our neighborhood, and particularly the children living in the neighborhood, have been those most significantly impacted. The fairgrounds, parks, and open spaces in our neighborhood have been decimated by transients, most of them from outside of our community, leaving hypodermic needles, alcohol bottles, and garbage, including human feces. These problems were not an issue prior to the warming shelter being opened, and the homeless being introduced into this area is a direct effect of the warming shelter being opened. There have been members of the city council expressing they don't want these activities from the people of the shelter in their backyard, so why should I have to burden those? In a recent conversation with a Whitefish City Council member, he openly stated that when the train people arrive, there's a concerted effort to move those people from Whitefish to Kalispell, regardless of where they are from. People riding the train to Whitefish are not people of our community, and in turn are stripping warm beds and resources from the members of our community who are in actual need of the warming shelter. The discussion tonight is not whether the warming shelter is a humanitarian positive or if it is actually helping people, which I highly question given that it is a low barrier to entry. Tonight is to discuss if the warming shelter has violated the CUP and if they are not acting as a good neighbor. The warming shelter's inability to adhere to rules that they had agreed to is not our neighborhood's responsibility to bear the burden of. I'm asking you to revoke the CUP. It has been clear by our neighbors that the shelter has in fact impacted our neighborhood in a negative way so that our children and residents in the neighborhood no longer feel safe. Please revoke this so that we can return to a safe and clean place to live again. Thank you.
Thank you all for this time this evening. My name is Sage. A couple of years ago, I was homeless. And during that time, if you are going to be homeless and hold a job at the same time, at that time I was enrolled in school. I study at the college. I'm a STEM major. But if you are going to be homeless and you are going to hold a job, and that's before we start talking about a social life or being, presentable enough to, like, for example, I have to be at school. You need to be able to keep your clothing clean, especially at this time of year, and you need to be able to keep yourself clean. Walking anywhere, you are going to sweat like a horse. When you get to where you're trying to be, you're gross, you're nasty. Your clothing is going to carry that sweat, and so at a lot of jobs you end up having to do is take a second change of clothes. So you walk to work with the clothing you're going to wear in your backpack. When you get to work, you change into that clothing. You dry off as best you can in the bathroom if there is one. And if I didn't have access to showers at the warming shelter, if I didn't have the ability to wash my laundry, I wouldn't have been able to hold my job. I would still be homeless. I wouldn't have been able to, we have very, very high expectations of each other as a society. Everybody in this room is meeting a standard of cleanliness. Everybody has nice enough clothes. Everybody is exhibiting a sufficient amount of wealth to be seen as a human person, and removing one of the resources required to be seen as a person is a terrifically selfish thing to do. You are not allowed to be at the warming center for any significant period of time. There are not people loitering there. There are not people hanging out there. You are allowed to be there if you are there to shower. When you're done showering, you're out. If you're washing clothing, you are allowed to be there while your clothing is in. When it's done, you're out. The only exception to that is during the winter when people are dying. I worked as a night auditor at a hotel here in Kalispell. I was at the Outlaw Inn on the south end of town. It's a rougher neighborhood. It's a cheap hotel, and you saw a lot of things, but one thing is that there are a lot of homeless people who come in during the winter who are looking for places to stay warm so that they don't die. All of you know exactly how hot it gets in Montana during the summer and the health risks and the dangers that come with that. You know exactly how cold it gets. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
I think one of the things that's going on here.
Can you give us your name again?
Sorry, yes. My name is Jay, and I live on up in the neighborhood of the warming center. I happen to have the great good fortune of being a homeowner out there, but I have been homeless as well, and I know exactly what they were talking about. I know how difficult it can be, and if I hadn't had access to those resources when I was young, The only lifestyle choice I made that made me homeless was to be young and from a poor family. I was going to school and I had a job, and I once moved 16 times in the space of 4 months because I couldn't keep up with the rents. And then I couldn't find a place that I could afford at all, and I was homeless while I was going to school and holding a job, and I know exactly what our previous speaker was talking about. And because of resources like the warming center, I was able to get through that, and now I am a taxpayer and a homeowner here. So it's not a lifestyle choice. And one of the issues here is a problem of causation and correlation. We have a correlation between opening the warming center and increase in homelessness. The opening of the warming center did not cause the increase in homelessness. They opened because of the increase in homelessness. Yes, we're going to see more impacts from homelessness in our entire city as people go through the same struggles I did when I was younger. But it's not the warming center. And if you take that away, there will be that many fewer people to become someone like me who can then help those people who are young and struggling. I rent rooms in my house to people who would otherwise be on the street. So I urge you to please do not close the warming center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lena Olson. I live on 5th Avenue West North. I work for Linderman Education Center, and I do see direct impact on homelessness on our youth and their families. And these are families that have raised their kids here, that have been within the Kalispell Public School District. They come to Linderman because of those challenges. And most of them who drop out, I would say, do face challenges with homelessness and poverty. I've heard the comments made by other people in my neighborhood. I believe them. I have not seen what they're talking about. I do not believe it's necessarily decimated. I enjoy the fairgrounds. I take walks. I have not feared for my safety. But I do believe them, and I believe that they have been impacted. And for me, it seems like it's less of a problem of the warming shelter, but a lack of capacity. So I had a student who was kicked out of her house last year. She slept in the back of a pickup truck in November. She called me, and she was really down. She was 18, so she was no longer a minor. And so I made the choice to meet her and help her try to find housing that night. So I met her downtown. We went to the Samaritan House. She was unable to get into the Samaritan House. I had her call her friends. I had her go back to her house and knock on the door. I watched with my own eyes as her mom opened it and slammed it. Her last resort was the warming shelter. She ultimately dropped out. She did not graduate. I have no idea where she is or what she's doing or how she's doing. I just urge you all to consider the impacts of the youth in our community, of the people and the families who have raised their youth here. How do we support them? It's not, it can't just be the warming shelter. It can't just be the warming shelter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carly Tuman, and I live on 5th Avenue West North. I was born and raised in Kalispell. When I was 5, my family moved into this neighborhood on the east side of the fairgrounds. I attended Russell Elementary School and Flathead High School. I moved away for college and returned with my husband in 2020. In 2021, we purchased a home in this same area. The initial nostalgia of living in the same neighborhood I grew up in wore off pretty quickly as we felt the need to add padlocks to our gates, security cameras on the outside of our home, and end our evening family walks through the county property behind the shelter and fairgrounds. The significant uptick in transient loitering in our neighborhood required us to make these decisions. This area of town has always been busy with vehicle and pedestrian traffic since there are several schools and main roads that act as corridors to the town. However, the addition of transients to the mix is new and growing rapidly. Around the shelter's hours of operation, we see transient foot traffic increase through our alleys and our front yards, lounging and loitering happening on Meridian and the cross streets, and putting up shop at the nearby parks and playgrounds. They leave the shelter, but they don't leave the neighborhood. I've seen EMS assisting a man passed out 2 doors down on the sidewalk. We've found needles at Washington Park. And have seen countless transients in our alleys having altercations and digging through the garbage. This is not the same neighborhood that it used to be. I'm a small business owner and have a P.O. box at the Meridian Post Office. They've had to reduce their lobby hours to prevent transients from seeking shelter there, and even with that change, I've still encountered them inside the lobby sleeping next to my P.O. box. For the people of the Whitefish community who continue to come to these meetings to promote the shelter's location and permit renewal in Kalispell, I highly doubt they would support and fund a shelter in between the Whitefish Middle School and Memorial Park. They're supporting it in Kalispell because they don't want it in their community, next to their schools and next to their restaurants. I appreciate their concern for our community, but they don't live here and are not impacted by the shelter as the actual residents are. We moved here from Missoula, where we lived for 10 years. If any of you have been to the north side of Missoula in the last decade, you would have seen the Poverello shelter and the negative impact it has created for surrounding residents and business. If the Kalispell shelter permit is renewed, our residents and elected officials should prepare for the same outcome within 2 to 5 years in our own backyards. My personal experience and the history of my family living in this neighborhood for 3 decades tell me with confidence that a shelter of this nature cannot be placed in a residential, small business and family community like ours. I urge the voting members to revoke the permit and work to find a better location and solutions for shelters in the Flathead Valley. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mandy Girth. I live on Kalispell's north east side. I am a renter and I would welcome, if there were ever a second warming shelter, for that to be in my neighborhood. It would be a great location. I would welcome that. And I'm a single woman who has 3 children. I would welcome that and probably not still lock my doors. Don't laugh at me, please. This council bringing up the issue of not renewing the permit for the warming center has caused an incredible amount of anxiety for the care workers who work with the homeless population in Kalispell. We have seen so many services close in the last 4 years. We are overworked. We are exhausted. In the last calendar year, youth homelessness, which is the field I work in, that's from birth to age 25, nationwide has increased 12%, and it has increased 20% in 1 year in Flathead County. People are not being bussed in. These are our people. These are our kids growing up, exiting foster, ending up homeless. I know them. I know their names. I know their stories. I know that this is not a lifestyle choice. I'm thinking of the single parent I know who was evicted and ended up homeless when she needed to take off work to take care of her terminally ill child. Not a lifestyle choice. The warming center is a tool in the toolbox that Kalispell could be building to be more resilient and compassionate, kind, and resourceful, as I know that we are, to face the housing crisis and the homeless crisis in our community. Closing the warming center would take one of our most vital tools, and we don't have many tools. It would take one of the tools out. Why would we do that? You are our elected officials. Our community has paid for this. We volunteer there. We've paid for it. And the 50 heartbeats a night in the winter that are the beds are people not out on the streets. We all know, and maybe not all, but definitely those of us here who work with the homeless population know that a federal law was just passed, making it illegal to sleep outside. If you hear the emotion in my voice, it's because I know the people that sleep outside, and I know the impact that it will have for them to have a criminal record of being outside sleeping. Are we really going to put 50 more of our most vulnerable people in the whole county out in the cold, in the winter, for KPD to have to take care of? That is not a good use of my tax money. This is a community solution we already have made. Why would we take that away? People who end up homeless do not have the safety net that we take for granted. How many people here moved back in with your parents after you moved out? How many people moved in with a friend or a coworker? How many people? In 2020, I and my 3 kids moved in above the garage of a family member, of a friend, because we had no place to go after a divorce. Everyone without that safety net would have been homeless. That's almost everyone in the room. The warming center is the safety net below the safety net. We have the best domestic violence center in the state here in Flathead County at the Abbey. The best one. Did you know that they don't take people who are experiencing sexual abuse from their parents? So that is what the warming center can do. A safety net under a safety net. Did you know that Samaritan House only allows family units for people who are married? They can go to the warming center though. It's a safety net underneath a safety net. Do you know the incredible amount of rules that they have at the Sparrow's Nest? I love the Sparrow's Nest, big fan of the Sparrow's Nest. And I'm very sure when I was 16, I would have been kicked out of the Sparrow's Nest. You have to be completely sober, be going to school, holding a job, and follow a lot of rules. I would have been kicked out. Did you know that no single student who has left from Sparrow's Nest and gone on to FVCC has made it in student housing for a whole year? They can't make it. They need more support. The warming center is where they end up. It is the safety net under the safety net. And I am so angry that it's even a consideration that we're taking it away before doing town halls, bringing in experts, and discussing how we can be putting more tools in this toolbox. More tools. I want there to be potable water, trash cans, and bathrooms in my neighborhood. That's the job of municipality. That's not what we need to be locking people up for loitering and needing to use the bathroom because they happen to be a person with a human body without a home. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your votes.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Hannah Lilly, and I live near Peterson Elementary. I have had the privilege of volunteering at the Warming Center on Sunday nights for the past 2 seasons. I don't know how relevant this will be for this discussion, but I'm also in LCPC in the state of Montana. And when I first heard that the Warming Center might lose their permit, I was slightly shocked. I remember talking to my friend, I was like, this is crazy. It's called the Warming Center. Literally, it exists so people won't die. And her response to me was, it's political. And that shook me and also helped me understand some of the divide. And I realized that it wasn't political to me because I volunteer there. I work there. You're talking about the human being who helped me do the dishes, you know? And I am super clumsy, and who helped me get up when I fell. And I realized that that is the piece that I would hope that all of y'all, before you do decide to do this and make this choice, I would invite all of you to volunteer at the Warming Center, to be able to meet these people, to hear their stories. I work as a counselor in the state of Montana, and I can tell you that the data says that the #1 indicator for homelessness is trauma. That is it. We know now, as we are learning, that trauma impacts so much, right? I mean, all of the adverse childhood studies showed that the #1 indicator for heart disease and all of these pieces was also trauma. I doubt you would look at someone and say, your heart attack, I mean, it is choices, it is biology, it is a very complex situation. And I want to name that I'm also a parent. So many people who have kids are talking about the complexities of that, and I can agree with them. I did not realize how many spaces children and sometimes unhoused people shared until I started volunteering at the homeless center. And then the homeless shelter, the Warming Center. And I would be at the library and I would see people that I know. And I would be with my son. And we do the bike path every single day. I don't know if you've seen us, but sometimes my son will take his pink unicorn and attach it to his bike, and act like a ninja, because obviously. And so we also bike up and down, and I see a lot of people at the Warming Center. And I completely agree with almost everyone in this room that being unhoused is a problem. And I want to tell you that the Warming Center is part of the solution. When you are there, they do have meetings. So you walk in, there's a big kind of sign-up sheet. You got to sign in. I don't know if y'all have been in big crowds, there's people yelling hey, you need a meeting. You haven't been here in a while. They keep track. People who go there, they do have to have meetings. But here's the thing, is that this is happening at a very complex time, right? I know many of you know that much of the funding for Medicaid, Medicare case managers was significantly cut. And so you get into these spaces, if you want to help and support people, I don't know if y'all have ever had these conversations, but it's get a job. Well, what do you need to get a job? You need some government paperwork. Well, if you've been unhoused for a long time, if mental illness is something for you, you have no idea where your Social Security thing is. I mean, how do you even sign up for that? Where's the computer? There are so many spaces, and the Warming Center helps people. They have computers there. They will help you sign up. There's an address. So even if you are working with other spaces, if you need your Social Security card, where are they going to send it to? The Warming Center provides all of the things that people need to move out of homelessness. If you want people to move out of homelessness, which I do, I would love to go on the bike path and it just be lovely. I would love if homelessness was not a problem. I don't think there's a single person that would disagree with that. But I do know, having been at the Warming Center, working in the field that I do, that the Warming Center is part of the solution, and it is helping people. I have seen people go through systems, go through treatment, come back and say hi. And that is the even more beautiful space. Because the Warming Center exists, people who have been out of homelessness can come back and say, I know you, there is a path, I walked it. It also provides a space for connection. I talk to other people there about being a mom, really basic human things. It gives people a space to have experience and culture and a step out. And I really entreat every single one of you, please come volunteer, spend a season with us, meet us, exist with us. And I swear that it couldn't be political. And y'all would see how much good the Warming Center does. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Grace Lynn Abel. I live on 4th Street West, very close to the Warming Center. I have an unattached statement to the rest of mine, which is that, as previously mentioned, in 2017 legislative session, $49 million of mental health funding was cut from the state budget. I believe that to be strongly correlated with our current crisis, among other economic factors. However, homelessness is a communal shame we all bear the burden of allowing to happen to our neighbors. I've heard several comments claiming they have never seen a homeless person in this neighborhood before the Warming Center's establishment. And I urge you to please seek optometric care. Having grown up on the west side of Kalispell, I have seen disadvantaged and vulnerable community members walking the streets of my town my whole life. They take shelter under the rails to Trails Bridge, the horse stalls at the fairgrounds, the bushes along Ashley Creek. It is easy to complain about a group of people you refuse to see as full people. From your heated buildings with running water and a roof over your head, you'd rather treat a human being as a pest or a nuisance than grant them the dignity of shelter. Whether you've personally witnessed their presence or are just now waking up to it, they have been here living a life of incredible hardship and suffering. Such suffering only amplified by calls for violence from our elected officials and a countywide declaration whose words were acted upon, resulting in a tragic loss of an unsheltered elderly disabled man who beat cancer just to be beaten to death by emboldened, young, housed, and privileged men. What solutions is the city working towards? Is it fair to continue to pass the buck along, spread misinformation, scapegoat the warming center? There are people and groups like the warming center striving desperately to be a piece of the puzzle to provide a modicum of relief to the suffering of our community members. At the very least, do not stand in the way of those who are putting in that work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jaden Weppel. I'm a resident of West Kalispell, just off of Meridian. Thank you for being here for 2 nights in a row. I know that for many of you, this has been the most exhausting and longest running thing you've had to deal with, either in your term or during your councilship. So thank you for being here and listening to the myriad of voices that are coming from this community, and I would just like to be another one. To that point, I would like to encourage council to not provoke the conditional use permit for the warming center. I grew up in Flathead County. I was born in Evergreen. I went to school with folks who lived at the RV park or lived near it or in relative states of house nest near and around it. It is no mystery to me or no unseen thing that there is homelessness in this valley. And if there was not a warming center today, I would be coming to the council to ask that it very strongly consider installing something like that in our community. And to be asking and begging and pleading that we find some way to squeeze it into some budget or some program. Luckily, through the generous donation of residents of Flathead County, we have a warming center that has poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into offering a service that helps to and alleviates the suffering of our unhoused neighbors and the homeless people in our community. When I graduated from FECC, I got my license in practical nursing, and I felt that I was acting in the behavior and character of my valley, when the first thing that I did was not to apply for a job, but to apply to work at the free clinic in Whitefish to serve folks who needed more resources than they were able to obtain on their own. I would like to think that that kind of ethos is still the thing that Flathead County and Kalispell stands for. I think of what is on the side of the warming center's, building. We take care of each other in the Flathead. I'd like to think that I have been trying to take care of my fellow resident in the Flathead, whether they're housed or unhoused, whether that's giving blood, whether that is volunteering my time, whether that is standing up here now asking that you please consider to retain or not revoke the conditional use permit for the warming center. I have also had the opportunity to volunteer at the warming center to provide some care for people's feet. No wonder that when you are walking all day, every day in various states of undress and in the weather conditions that we experience here in Kalispell, that your feet become injured and you need to seek medical care. And it is wonderful that the warming center has provided an opportunity for people to seek out and receive that care. So that way they can avoid not just the pain of whatever ailment is affecting them, but also to avoid having to have that develop into an even further problem, which then needs more significant help. And I think that in a very similar way the warming center does that with any myriad of issues that I am not privy to seeing, whether that is establishing a roadmap for every single person who comes into the warming center, and during the winter months, every 7 days, reconfirming and making sure that there is some way that they can help or proceed on that roadmap, whether it is giving them a haircut, whether it is doing the simple dignity of giving them a place to sleep or a place to shower. And for those reasons, and I suspect many more that you have already heard and will continue to hear, I encourage council to not revoke the conditional use permit for the warming center. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arthur Fredheim. Microphones are my enemy, so if I start sounding weird, just let me know and I'll adjust it again. I've been attending the city council meetings on this subject for a while, and I've tried to listen to what people say more than I speak. But I know we've had some people speak a second time already, so I'll try not to repeat myself. I was here yesterday, and I'll just say this for the benefit. I know we'll at least have one council member who wasn't able to make it yesterday, and some of the people in the audience weren't, and some of the people who made it yesterday couldn't make it today. We did have a very overwhelming, I say we, but I mean the community had a very overwhelming presence in favor of the warming center. And yes, that did include, representatives of the warming center who were specifically asked to speak and to make their case by this council. But it also include a lot of people like myself, just ordinary citizens of Kalispell, ordinary residents, just speaking in our individual capacities, who are in favor of it. I am not, nor have I ever been in the employ of the warming center or of any other homeless shelter. I don't get any, I think I've given them about $5, but I've not gotten any money from them. And I'm not anybody's proxy. And I think also when you talked about people who have come from Whitefish, I've seen only one outside agitator from outside our community, and that's Roger Hopkins, and I'm kind of responsible. I emailed him and let him know that this is going on. He might like to come watch, but I think he can be forgiven. He was being a former mayor, and I would encourage y'all to look at his picture, because that said, I think from yesterday, from what I heard, I can't address the arguments of the lawyers. I mean, I think, from what it sounded like, they have a readable case, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, to judge that. But I think the underlying claims of justice and just of economics make a lot of sense. So when we give as a community, a conditional use permit or any sort of permit to an entity, whether that's a nonprofit entity like the warming center, whether that's a business corporation, or whether that's a homeowner, to do something, and they've gone through the proper channels, they've gone through it in advance, then they have the expectation that they can invest and they can make decisions. And it absolutely makes sense that if they have this permit, if we pull it out, if you pull it out from under them after giving them, it creates a climate where there's uncertainty, where nobody knows that what they could do, and whether that all that work is just going to become a sunk cost. And that applies to any institution. I know it was mentioned by the pastor earlier that potentially the Samaritan House and other charities and religious groups and not-for-profit groups that help the homeless population and help other marginalized groups could be targeted next. After the murder of Scott, which was alluded to earlier, I remember reading in the Daily Interlake the reactions from all of you. And what you said, liberal or conservative, what all of you said in some form or another was, whether we thought the council should do more, the city should do more as an entity, you appreciated what the private interests are doing, what the private sector is doing, and that's the warming center. It's a private individual volunteer, and volunteer means you don't get paid. Volunteer doesn't mean you get paid. Volunteer means you don't get paid in this context, unless they've changed the meaning of words. That individual effort, it would just be a shame to see that go to waste, because we can't, and this is what I said the first time I spoke to you, we can't make it so that the warming center never existed. We don't have a time turner. And all that money that was invested in building the warming center, it could have been used differently. It could have been used for something else, but it's been used for this. And absolutely, I would fear for the future of Samaritan House, because and I've listened to all the complaints about the warming center from businesses, from individuals, and, as I've said before, empathetic to them. But the truth is that one thing that every complaint has in common is it's not about somebody who's actually in the warming center. It's about an unhoused person who's outside the warming center. If we take the warming center away, all those people, those 50 people who are now in the warming center, they're now outside. They're now able to cause trouble. And I'm not really sure what the alternative is. I don't think any realistic alternative has been presented to this council, either by us who are commenting or by internally, because, are we going to build it in a different neighborhood? I'd be fine with it being built in my neighborhood as an individual, but I don't think there's, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that's the direction the council's going to go. Are they just going to let people freeze to death? That some of the not any of the comments I heard tonight, but some of the earlier comments I've heard from people who who are going and making comments for political reasons, some of them did seem to have that subtext that people are just going to go away. They're just going to freeze. And I worry. I don't worry about people's compassion, right? I'm not here to judge the content of your hearts, but the actions that we do today. What are going to be the implications if we close it? The warming center, is it going to just sit empty? Is it going to be like the Outlaw and the other buildings that we've talked about yesterday that just sit empty now? Are they going to put a fence or a chain link fence around it to keep people from breaking in? Are they going to bulldoze it and just have an empty field, an eyesore? I just do not think there is a realistic approach to keeping it open. And that is why, I've listened. I know you all listened. I appreciate your time. I appreciate that you're willing to stay up till 11 p.m. like you did that one time and, debate this issue. But at the end, it's a binary choice. Do we keep it? Do we not keep it? And I think the choice I would urge you to make is to keep the warming center open and keep the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm the Bradford Fenchak. I'm here to talk about elephants. I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm talking about the elephants that are being ignored. The entire city has a problem with unhoused individuals being in the way of businesses, and it's not just around the warming center. My daughter-in-law's business moved because of that. So that just does not fly. It is not in one area. Our city is impacted because we have unhoused individuals. We have unhoused individuals because we lost a lot of low-income housing. Getting low-income housing is difficult. When you are on the street, it is darn hard to go and keep a job and look presentable if you're sleeping in your car. And there are people who I have to give them many, many kudos. They're doing that. They are doing their jobs. They're doing their best, and they're getting nowhere because there's not much to do here for housing. And then there's people with mental health problems. I don't care if you have all the money of anybody in this room, in this town, in this county. There is a dearth of mental health help. If you have an addiction and you need to dry out, you're going to go to Rimrock and Billings. There's nobody, nowhere that will do it in Western Montana except for Pathways for a very short term if you have a place to go. That is critical that we need, and it's not just for the unhoused. That's for everybody. We are failing the citizens of Kalispell and Flathead County. We have had chances where we could work together, the county, the city, and the nonprofits. And we could start to address these problems that need to be solved. They need to be worked on. We are wasting lives of people who are a valuable resource. We're wasting the lives of people who could fill some of these jobs where all the signs are help wanted, help wanted. They can't, I don't know how many of my friends have lost their kids because they had to move away because they can't afford to live here. When, you know, those are elephants. Then there's the other elephant. Let's see, Tanya Harding's getting wealthy off of homelessness. Maybe somebody ought to go look at the Flathead Warming Center 990 and see if they'd be willing to do, let's see, 1 month of what she does for what she gets for a year. We have to work together. We need the support services. If somebody has been living in their car and living on a survival mode, not knowing where they're going to sleep that night, if they're going to be harassed where they're sleeping that night, and are still trying to hold a job, is it fair to get rid of the one place that could help them? That's what I'm seeing. I mean, we are not moving forward on problems that are part of our city and our county that is, we're killing people. We're tearing families apart because the families can't stay together because the kids can't stay here. Or they're homeless, and then that tears the families apart. Then we have the families that are torn apart after COVID because people got depressed, they got on drugs. Where are they going to go for the help? If any of you have dealt with that, you know that's true. The help is not here. We need it. That's going to really, we have to work together. The nonprofits would be loving the opportunity to work together with you guys. I've actually written to the county and to you about we need to have a day center, which is one of the things the Warming Center is doing. People who are not housed and are trying to move forward, they need a way, as the young gentleman said, they need a way to be able to be clean, to have clean clothes. They need to have an address. And if we take that away, we're depriving the city and this county and the valley of people who could be valuable contributing people. And I beg you not to close down the Warming Center because you're closing down opportunity for people to have a life.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Christina Nelson, and I live at the Warming Center. How many of you have ever been there? How many? Who's gotten a tour? What'd you guys think of it?
We're not allowed
We
to
don't
respond while
answer.
you're speaking, sorry.
You know, I've seen people come and go, and I'm blessed that I can stay there because I had one surgery, I need another. And without the Warming Center, I would be out on the streets like I was last summer. Who thought it was funny to have their kids egg us? Yeah, my son and I got egged. We got treated like dirt. Teenagers come up to me and ask me if they could pet my cat. And my dog is not a cat. I'm appalled. What if you guys, have you ever heard, everybody is one paycheck away from homelessness? Would it bother any of you? No, because you have your homes to go to. There's a lot of us that don't. And there's other reasons. I am not a drug addict. I am not an alcoholic. I've lived in this valley since 1966. And I am so ashamed of this town and these people. We never got treated like this until an article was wrote. And, you know, there's people that are saying, well, everybody's a drug addict. I'm not. Everybody's saying, hey, there's alcoholics. I have medications that prevent me from drinking. So if the warming shelter is helping, why would you close it? Do you guys realize if you close the warming center, there's going to be more crime, there's going to be more needles, more alcoholics, there's going to be people freezing to death? Do you guys want that on your conscience? I'm so frustrated because I am a guest volunteer. I know these people. I have stayed on the streets with them. And it's hard to watch some of them because they have mental health issues like I do. Where's the help for that? There is none. I can't say no more.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, I am against this low barrier usage. I'm hearing an awful lot of judgment against those who are against it, the low barrier. And that's because you have a whole Flathead Valley that isn't begging to have it in their neighborhood. The people that live in this neighborhood are the ones that are suffering. Yes, we all want a safe place for the homeless. I just have to read my stuff here. And no one has a problem with the people who are not abusing drugs and alcohol and being a danger to the residents in that neighborhood. It's only 1 mile to the Kalispell Middle School back entrance. Children walk by to and from there. I've heard many nightmare tales about things happening in people's neighborhoods. This is just not the place for a low barrier homeless shelter. Property values are lowered because of it. I don't feel safe where I work and live. I'm always waiting to see when they're going to show up in the neighborhood I'm at, which isn't too far from this. I do work and own a business in that neighborhood, very close to it. I have never once seen homeless families there. I've seen no children there. I think anyone who took their children there would be the last thing you would want to do. I drive by them back and forth twice a day, as do the children going to and from schools. And I'm tired of everyone who is for it in the whole wide Flathead Valley judging those who actually live there and are not volunteers. I'm not going to volunteer for it because I don't want to encourage that in my neighborhood. I have no problem with those that with a higher expectation. In other words, so it's safe, so you don't have people who are, and you know, the ones that are dangerous because of mental issues as well. There's got to be a better way to do it that doesn't affect the people in that neighborhood. There are people that have worked hard for their homes. It's a modest area. and they don't deserve to have all the things that have been reported happening on their own property. It has not met the promised expectations that were drawn up in that original agreement. And as a matter of fact, it is very true that I have never had any problem or any concern about the homeless people until the warming shelter did open. I can see it from where I work every day. And I just want to ask the people that are for it, do these people sleep under your front porch? Okay. Do they crap on your porch? Do they drink straight liquor from a bottle on your property and park their vehicles on your property and pull out their lawn chairs so that they can go through their belongings and rearrange them? And later you find all their stuff on your property, all their personal belongings, and then they get angry when you remove it. And they store their, one person was stealing his drug paraphernalia in our sandbox. Another person stole that box, and they yelled at us about it. They used our outlets for their electrical, phone charging, possibly heating pads. I don't know what else when we're not there. This is just not the place for a low barrier facility. It's not safe. And long story short, more people are affected negatively if you consider our neighborhood versus the number of people they're helping. That if you could just send these people who have the real issues and are a danger to the people in the neighborhood, we can deal with the rest. It's just not, it's not good for the people that actually live there. Again, more people are harmed than helped by it if you just get rid of the people. Send them someplace where there is a low barrier area, where they're not able to get out and do the things that they've been doing to us since it opened. It is not a matter of politics. It's about quality of life for the people that had it before that facility moved in. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor Johnson, City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to weigh this situation and take input. And in what I hope will be a decision that takes in all aspects of it. My name is Mark Flateau. Having been involved in many public meetings in the past, I will keep my comments short and to the point. I stand as a volunteer for the Warming Center. I started that probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I believe that it's a great experience. It's if you haven't volunteered, it's amazing when you see firsthand, and you're there, and you're greeting the guests of the homeless center, and you're seeing their needs, how that changes you, and it has changed me in that regard. With that said, I have read and heard firsthand at one of the previous meetings and tonight the concerns of neighbors in the area of the warming center. Those concerns have to be dealt with. If any of us had property and those things in the area and those things were happening, we would be concerned. And again, those cannot just, those have to be addressed, and I'll get to that point in just a minute. What I find when I volunteer at the warming center is I walk away with a deep sense of gratitude, not gratitude necessarily for what I have, which I'm blessed, but the gratitude that is expressed to me by the guests of the homeless center. In a 2-hour volunteer shift, I don't think I'm embellishing this, but 30 times at least, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the coffee. Thanks for whatever it is I'm doing, cleaning up, whatever the case may be. I generally have seen nothing but cooperative thankful, grateful hearts from those who are at the warming center. The one time that I experienced a negative was an evening shift. There was an individual outside who, based on previous behaviors, did not meet the criteria to be able to stay at the warming center. The staff were kind but very firm. And he threw a tizzy fit out in the parking lot, and the police had to be called, and it was dealt with. And I was very impressed by how that situation was handled in order to keep those safe inside. And again, who knows the circumstances of that young man on that particular night. But I look at the warming center and I realize there are concerns and we must address them. And it has to be addressed in a holistic manner. I look at it as a moral imperative. The humanitarian need is so great, we cannot close the doors. With that said, I would encourage you in your leadership positions to reach out to our county commissioners. They have to be involved. And I would encourage you to bring together our best thinkers in this community, our community leaders on both sides of the issue, and begin to put together a long-term plan that addresses the addiction that we've heard about, the issues that are dealt with, the mental health, and of course, our homelessness issue. It would be a knee-jerk reaction to revoke this permit. It would be stabbing ourselves in the foot, worse yet, stabbing ourselves in the back. It's not going to solve the issue, but we must address it. Changes need to be made. And I've heard nothing but a level of cooperation from the leadership of the warming center. Let's work together. We understand we have issues, and let's work together to address those. But it's going to take a much larger body and a group of community members that will tackle that. And again, certainly willing to volunteer for that and work together for the good of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Ken Young. My wife and I have been back to Kalispell for about 12 years. We live clear on the east side on Woodland Avenue. How did I come here? We've volunteered for the Warming Center for several months this year. We had given to its ministry for some years before that. I'm reminded of this one thing that I think we all must be aware of. I believe this is a problem that's too big for any of us. I don't think that we're meant to handle it by ourselves. I believe there's a God who cares about this valley, that cares about this community, cares about people who have and people who do not have. Jesus said, the poor you'll always have with you. Proverbs 19:17 says, he who gives to the poor honors the Lord, and he, the Lord, will repay with interest. I believe that we are basically, when push comes to shove, fairly selfish people. No matter if we know the Lord personally or not, we always have a tendency that way. And I believe personally that God, when he says the poor you'll always have with you, and that's a fact. We can try to remove care situations that we're talking about right here, but I'm convinced that will never solve the problem at all. I believe God allows the poor, the needy, the have-nots, the people who don't deserve it to be among us, to draw out a sense of compassion from our hearts who have far more than they do. Wherever we live in, whatever part of the community that we're in. I also believe part of the issue here is, do I care about poor people in this community? If I'm a Christian, if I'm a God-fearing person, do I pray for people in this community? We live over on, as I say, Woodland Avenue, and we have a group of homeless people that go down into the part below, which is county, and they put up their bivouacs. We encounter them periodically there. I know there are other areas in the community that are like that as well. But this fact that if God is God, I believe that I and each of us have an accountability toward those who are less fortunate. They don't deserve it, but they desperately need it. I don't know about you in your own life, She goes through situations in life where you have needs, that you need help, and you can be honest with yourself. I don't deserve it, but I surely need it. And if I can get help, I'm going to take it. And working at the warming center, as this man just before me said, he came away blessed each time. And I would say my wife and I did too. We met people, some of the people there. I remember one man, and he had been off of alcohol for some time, and yet his attitude was such that I'm not going to be surprised if he has a relapse. A couple weeks after that, it was during Christmas time, saw him walking on the street, and he had gone back to the alcohol. He was removed from the warming center. He was kind of a staff person in part in that situation. One of the things also I see in this, conflict is real. Many of us are married, many of us have children, we're in work situations, and we have conflicts. And there's some basic ways to handle a conflict. One is to win on your side, to get what you want. The other one is to leave, to exit it, because you don't get what you want. Another one is to give in and cooperate, but you really didn't mean it. A fourth one is to somehow learn to work together. And I believe, again, from a God orientation, folks, part of this beloved community, we have this problem so that we can learn to work together. I fully appreciate, and I have to agree with any who have had problems. Their warming center is not a perfect place. And I'd ask for a raise of hands. How many of you are perfect? How many of us have it all put together? How many of us don't make mistakes? None of us fit that category. There's only one that did, and he's the showcase one for all of us. Warming center is not perfect. I believe that they do a good job. I've seen volunteers that are there for day in and day out that are just so sacrificial in there. I've seen people who've been helped to get jobs, people who've been helped to get permanent housing, people who have been helped for medical needs, people who have been helped for counseling. Those low barrier coming in, it's not just food and clothing, a good night's sleep and a shower and then sending away. They seek to minister and to help people in the broader aspects of life. I think of this valley, most of the clients that we worked with were from the Flathead Valley. There were a few that were from outside, but most of those, and I would purposely ask them, where are you from? Some had family in the area, and we would certainly encourage them to tie into that, but all families don't function together real well at that point. And I guess for me, looking at this valley between Kalispell and Whitefish, Columbia Falls, and throw in Big Fork too, I believe there's such a need to work together on a problem that's our problem. This is our valley, this is our community, but we're in it together. It's not the other guys. If I live here and I work here, it's ours. And somehow, I believe we need to work together. I don't think it's an either-or situation. I would strongly advocate the continuation of the warming center, but it sounds like there may be some new guidelines that need to be there. There needs to be some accountability, some meeting together between the council and warming center staff, and then also a larger consortium of caring people, both civil leadership, spiritual leadership, community people that really have a heart for ministering to the homeless, to come together as a larger group to push this thing forward. It's not going to go away. It's going to stay, and we have a responsibility to, I think, come together in a bigger way and make it work in a better way for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Oh, sir? Did we get his name? We got his name. We're good. We just want to make sure we had your name on the record, sir.
Ken Young.
Ken Young, thank you.
Yes, yep. My wife's name is Grace. We've been married for 58 years.
My name is Tanya Atley. I own North Meridian Salon, right next to the warming center, and I struggle with all of this. I believe in helping people. I like the idea of hand up, not hand out. And I see that there is a need, and I think that I think I've seen help. I'm not exactly sure about that. Tanya and I've had conversations through text. I'd love to see the data on the help, but everybody's addressed like the need and how great it is. And for the 50 people that get there each night, I don't think that there's any I don't think there's any question that it helps. It's the people that don't get in that affect us. That could I tell you that the warming center's been a great neighbor? No, I'd be lying. Tanya's a nice person, and she tries to rectify all the things that go wrong, but it's just continual. It's because they cannot control the people that they can't let in. That's not in their scope. They do wonderful things for the people that they do let in, I believe. I haven't been in there, but it's the people that aren't that, that like, I could go through the list of things. There's so many that we, Tanya and I have texted about, and police have been called and stuff. But I think the real thing that we have lost sight of here is that it's whether they're following the guidelines of the permit. And we all know that there's help and they do things and stuff, but then there's stuff that's really, really bad. And so it's like, what do we do about that? And then to hear that they want to build on and make bigger before they're only adequate at the building that they have now scares me and puts a lot of worry in my scope of things. I can't imagine if it's I think I read a 200 bed thing. I am like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? That'll be really hard to run a business next door to, because essentially it's a bad neighbor. It's just someone, and mostly bad because the people coming in that fluctuate don't know the rules. So they come in, they leave trash, they, all the things, and then they leave, and they have to, and if they don't abide by the rules, then they don't get to come in, and so then they're left in the parking lot, and then they're mad, and so I see the help, I see the need, but I struggle with the impact. And so it's it's a cause and effect situation for me. And I, much like everybody else, am to really think about it. I don't have a solution. I don't know. I can tell you that it just greatly has impacted our business. My clients ask all the time I said very beginning, came to the first meeting and I was like, I work late at night. And clients ask, do you need me to walk you to your car? It's like, no, I'll figure it out. Go ahead, lock the doors and all the things. And so I'm here to tell you it affects us. I appreciate you being here. This is a hard job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cassie Congdon, and I live at 530 West Wyoming Street. I'm a local whose family has been here for generations. I'm a homeowner, a business owner, and a lover of humans. I'm very nervous, so I'm going to go off a little bit here from what I wrote. Based on what I've heard, it is absolutely not political. I once too was a rebel. I once had many conversations when I lived in Seattle with my Republican father, where I did not agree with some of the ways that he saw things, but he, along with my family who lives here, who are all different realms of political beliefs, who we love each other, and we are not vile human beings. I have watched my family help people at the end of their own arm my entire life, and that's all that we know. So anyway, I just wanted to state that. I'm sure that you all know that it isn't political, and it is scary getting up here. Especially if you're going to speak in any way against helping and caring for other human beings. What I've emailed based on my personal experiences with my young family living on West Wyoming Street is only in hopes of maintaining my neighborhood's quality of life, safety, and comfort. And I am in favor of rescinding this UP, mostly concerning the low barrier and what they have stated earlier about how I don't disagree that the warming center is trying to do things within their own walls. However, what's scary to the neighbors is, yes, what is happening from the people who are introduced into the area if they're not behaving, and it's taking all these wonderful human beings that I know from our community to help keep them behaved. The other side of it too is many of the people that they've spoken about and given accounts for, I want them to have the help, and my heart hurts for Jade and Jay and what they had to say about working and having somewhere to clean their clothes. Like, those aren't the people that we are having a hard time with and are scared of. And being that rebel and being raised around cowboys, I'm not scared much, but there have been times recently where I have been. I can see the back of the warming center from my property because of the size of the field to the east of the warming shelter, which is approximately 500 yards or 1,500 feet long, just the field itself. I'm not within the 150 feet. However, for scale, I went and measured my front yard, and 150 feet from my house would encompass the end of the other side of my direct neighbor. So to put into perspective, if the warming shelter was 2 doors down from my house, that would not be within the 150 feet, but I would consider the 2 doors down within my neighborhood. Firstly, last night I heard someone from the warming center state that they had not received any specific names or specific incidents which have happened to be able to respond on the matter, which confused me, because over 20 people spoke at the first meeting on May 28th about the negative effects we were experiencing since the opening of the shelter, which didn't happen in the area prior to that. This is all posted in meeting minutes on the council website, as well as video recorded. Secondly, I'm sorry to say, but when they come up here, specifically even Tanya in meeting minutes, representing that she cares and empathizes with us, that is said, but then in turn to turn around and say multiple times throughout when she was speaking false narratives or lies, all evening yesterday, and when she was talking, that makes it very difficult for a person like me to feel comfortable to go to somebody with concerns when I feel like it's going to fall on deaf ears, and there's only going to be deflection, and then that what I've experienced and my family has experienced, that it's going to be called a lie or a false narrative. Sorry. If they say lies and narratives enough during their presentation, will that make all of our experiences and new life on the Northwest side not true? No, the truth still exists whether they want to admit it or not, which of course they would not admit to the wrongdoings because that would give you reason to revoke. If they had empathy and wanted to hear from the neighbors, then why on the first night after Mr. Mayor asked that the neighbors have a chance to speak, did 12 of the warming center volunteers, employees, donors, and board members make sure to interject their opinions in between 19 of those business owners and homeowners who spoke that night? I counted this from the meeting minutes. This shows a total disrespect and disregard. At that point, I saw my neighbors leave, thinking their words were going to be drowned out in calculated manner because of this calculated manner, and if it wasn't calculated, then it was extremely rude. The warming center has publicly asked why some of us didn't call. With the wrongdoing comes stages, and especially, again, being raised the way that we were in my home, if something happens around it, We handle it. We try to handle it ourselves. We don't immediately go tattle or whine. When it happens repeatedly, as a local mother, in my children's lives, I represent not only myself, but them. And business owner, we are extremely hesitant who we tell as to not be slandering or gossiping of anything that's happening. But we also don't want to be chalked up as vile, uncaring human beings who could potentially have our livelihoods and businesses suffer. This is why you may have not heard it, and still, there are businesses close who, if you go speak to them directly, will tell you what has happened, but will not come and publicly speak in fear of losing business. This is not a narrative. I was told by office managers, owners of businesses in the area when I was walking around and asked where they stood and how we could help. I wanted them to know that late at night, if they were leaving their business, we are a neighbor and my husband would be right there. Third, many of the examples used by the Warming Center and those in favor have stories on folks down on their luck. Children, fathers with the pressure of being providers, domestic violence situations, the blue and white not being available anymore. And again, even tonight, the care that any of us who are in opposition have is extreme. It's the low barrier side of it and what we're experiencing from that. So none of the accounts that I heard tonight had, even the gal who spoke, who is over it, she is not a drinker, she is not alcoholic or uses drugs, but we've had situations where you cannot reason with somebody who's on methamphetamine. It's extremely hard, and if they're being revoked, they are being introduced into our neighborhood. Which brings me to my next point of my fear of the Warming Center jumping to create loopholes in the application based on definitions. Last night, they talked about increase versus introduce. They did not deny that there is an increase in the homelessness in that area. That alone scares me and my family, along with their plans of expansion, what that could look like. So by definition, they are denying an introduction of homelessness into the area. At the post office, there's no denial. There didn't used to be homelessness, and now there is. That introduction, I have a hearing impaired friend who was jumped by homeless sleeping in the entry. She is now accompanied by someone every time she goes into the post office. This is not a false narrative. This is a real incident which happened because of the homelessness that has been introduced. Sleeping, loitering, and defecation at the green electrical box, which is 750 feet or some approximately. This was not a constant, and now it's a new normal, a new introduction. Signs which were in yards of businesses along Meridian are now taken down or have to be locked behind due to thieves. This is a crime introduced into the neighborhood. From the records of calls from our emergency services with the graphs and heat maps showing when the center is open versus closed, before it was in business and after, how is that being denied that crime has not been introduced into the area, along with neighbors' accounts of what once was and what is now? Not all patrons are taking transportation to and from, even though they have set this up last night as they talked about Eagle Transit. They don't have full control of these folks. In fact, they are out of control of the folks. And again, this is what we are in fear of. We experience what we call the 5 p.m. parade. This is not a false narrative. Our children watch and hear the screaming and yelling as they drag their belongings, as they smoke and have a total disregard for their surroundings, and head westward towards Meridian and back in the morning. We watch them loiter down our alley. We're scared to send our daughter to the house 2 doors down the alley, 2, without being helicopter parents. I don't want to be a helicopter parent. I was raised in the 80s and 90s here, and I want my child to be able to go 2 houses down the alley. She is now also not allowed to go to Trinity Lutheran Playground or Washington Street Park or Baskin Robbins. This especially after, well, I don't know if I'm going to say this. I told you in an email. It was very shocking what happened in front of our house. I'm supposed to tell my children where they live is safe. And with these type of characters now introduced into our neighborhood, I have to wait until something bad happens from them, from my family to them, my family or my neighbors, for something to happen. We now have cameras and signs all over our home. No loitering, no public bathroom signs are all over business storefronts down Meridian. This used to not be the case. We're not vile or heartless. We used to live on the west side near the Samaritan House and had no bad experiences. Our family frequently donates food to the Samaritan House. My husband is a chef and cooks massive meals for the Abbey shelter. My grandma is on a fixed income and she makes sure to budget to give food. She's a Republican. This is not political. We help at the end of our own hands. We don't talk about it. It's not for the clout. We have hearts too. In first grade, we let our daughter walk to Peterson Elementary School. Our friends in the emergency services, who are government workers and cannot stand and speak publicly because it wouldn't be public comment, it would be government comment, have told us privately that we should have talked to them before buying our house on that side of town. They can't tell us specifics, but told us to absolutely not let our child even a single time ride her bike from our home to Kalispell Middle School, where she will be going to school next year. We are also a split family home, intentionally buying on this side of town for convenience for our kids to go between our homes. We were warned to absolutely not let them go in between the homes alone. If there wasn't danger on that stretch of road in between, which is right past the warming center, from what these government employees know and told us, then why would they have told us that and warn us of that? I moved back home from Seattle to raise my children in a safe place. This is absolutely not what I thought I would hear buying a home on the northwest side of Kalispell. In Seattle, too, I'd like to add off of this, I lived next to the Jewish Federation, Soup Kitchen, and YWCA, and there are things that I've seen on the northwest side of Kalispell that I did not see on my block there in Seattle. I'm in the real estate and construction industry. Our neighbor has expressed that once he completes a few improvements, he is going to, quote, dump his house, and he'll give me a call, based on what he has seen. We share a fence line. This is incredibly scary to the value of my home and the hours of hard work we've gone to afford a home in this area. Lastly, I heard last night denial of collective communication, which could introduce homelessness into Kalispell, which didn't already exist here. That there is no proof, but can the burden of truth go both ways, and can they prove that they aren't? Excuse me. There are incredible federal and state programs out there to receive free phones and phone plans. Federal government lifeline assistance, maybe? Okay. Well, along with that, I've heard that there are apps to which they can find shelters, specifically with addresses, phone numbers, social media presence, and ratings to easily be informed no matter what zip code you're in to get to. I am glad this is available for those who are trying to get better and improve their lives. I truly am. But my goodness, if they come there knowing that it's a low barrier shelter and then they can't adhere to the rules and then they're in my neighborhood, is why I'm standing up here shaking tonight. Yeah, again, and if they can't perform upon arrival the rules, and if they're unable to stay, then that is introducing a level of low barrier homelessness and crime into our neighborhood. In closing, all of the emails you have received, the accounts here of what neighbors have experienced are happening when the warming shelter is open. We are not making it up. We're not trying to take away anybody's liberties or dignity. From the meetings that I've watched from home, as well as being here, not a single person who is against this has viewed people without housing in the way that those are for say that we do. That's false. We are also not liars, and we are not spreading false narrative. I don't have the time or interest to do so. Again, being a mother and a business owner, at this point, things have been truly happening for us to get to this point here. Please don't words are powerful, and please don't let the way that words are spoken from the warming center convince you that we're wrong or to question our reality and what is happening. Excuse me, sorry. I do think, however, it would be wonderful if we could revoke it and come back to a place of better planning, having an application where there aren't loopholes in the verbiage, and having a place for all of the people who I heard speak tonight to have a place. But the low barrier side of it, for the rebels who would get kicked out of other places, I don't think that they should be put first above the businesses and the vested owners of our community. I think that they need to learn some lessons and maybe have a little bit of order with the chaos in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jan Woods, and I live out on Airport Road. So I am a community member at large, even though I'm little. Got to put a little humor in all this. I'm a fourth generation Montanan. I grew up here. I grew up poor. I wore my brother's clothes as hand-me-downs. My folks were not, didn't have enough money to send me to college. I did not have enough money to send me to college. So after bugging Conrad Bank, anybody that's here that's old enough to remember Conrad Bank is old. I bugged them and bugged them. I did not have a college education. They did not want to hire me, but I wanted to work. Finally, they hired me. In working there, I befriended a homeless gentleman. He would come in with his nickels and pennies and deposit them. He became a great friend. He was a friend to everybody in the community. He was a homeless person. He was a homeless person by choice. Back in the day, you weren't supposed to look at how much money people had in their checking accounts as a teller. My oldest daughter was born. This gentleman went to a jewelry store and he bought me a baby silver cup at a jewelry store for my baby. I thought, my Lord, this man digs in garbages for food. He digs in garbages for relics to try to get money. And then he brings me those pennies to deposit. How could he afford a baby, a silver baby cup for me? You can imagine how my heart felt. I loved this man. The community loved this man. Everybody knew him, and it wasn't just him. There was several homeless people that lived in Kalispell. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. Everybody helped him. Anyway, getting back to looking at how much money he had in this checking account. One day I decided I'm going to look and see how much money. I'd been there a long time, so at that time he had over $100,000 in his checking account. He chose to live his life in the way he lived it. It gave me even more respect for him. Even more love for him. Fast forward to 2023. I am a local city small business owner. I do not live, or my business is not by the barrier. Last year I had a gentleman whose truck broke down in my parking lot. It was a homeless gentleman. He broke down in my parking lot with his 2 dogs. He said, "Do you have a job opening?" I said, "Today's your lucky day." And I gave him a job. He lived in his truck with his 2 dogs at the end of our parking lot. After he'd worked for a few weeks, he wondered about getting a camper. I bought the gentleman a camper in which he lives in at the back of our property. He's still basically homeless. He doesn't like living there. He'd rather be in the hills. His choice is to live how he is living, but he wants to be a productive person in the community. Since then, he's bought that, paid me back for that camper. He's bought a truck. They're licensed. He pays taxes, paid his taxes, all this kind of stuff. I love this man. He's one of the hardest workers in our building. And it pains me to say, unfortunately, I'm not in favor of the warming center. And it's not because of these people that have come up here and have talked about their great stories of how that warming center helped them. It's about those few bad apples, unfortunately, who have ruined it for the businesses around there, for the homeowners around there. It's just so unfortunate. I think our infrastructure is not set well. Everybody's tapped out. Every business is tapped out. The police are tapped out. The hospitals are tapped out. Without that infrastructure, it's hard to maintain control. And until that kind of infrastructure can be put into place, which it all costs money, I don't have the solution for that. It's unfortunate. As you can tell, I'm a lover of people too. I'm a lover of homeless people. If not, I wouldn't have a great employee and a great friend that was close to my heart for many, many years. You guys have a very, very tough decision to make. It's a tough decision to make, and I don't relish your job. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So my name is Jamie Quinn. I live at 729 6th Avenue West in Kalispell. So just a little history for maybe some of our newer city councilors or our new attendees that have recently been coming the past few months. This discussion's been going on before the warming center was here. There was a homeless report that was done poorly, frankly. But even after that, 8 months before the warming center got their permit from a former city councilor regarding homelessness. My feeling is the scumbag that was parked over there by the gully in a freaking ugly ass motorhome could have raped and pillaged my young woman, including my daughter. That's the kind of crap we don't need in our neighborhoods. End quote. After that, it was followed up by our mayor. Sleeping in a car in front of a house in the street isn't the solution. I beg of you, is the warming center not a solution to that? Where else are they supposed to go? The other thing, because I don't want to belabor everybody's night any longer, is along with a letter to the editor that was written today from Walter Roundtree, I would ask that Councilman Klusner recuse himself from a vote due to a conflict of interest with his direct employer being our county commissioners, and the county commissioners writing, quote, excuse me, I need to find my quote here because I've been looking at so many of them. Quote, we are asking our peers serving on city councils to not permit or expand warming shelters, end quote. That is a direct conflict of interest, and I ask that he recuse himself. Thank you.
And that would be Councilman Nunley, not Councilman Klusner.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, women. I'm Renee,
Demler, and I live on West Wyoming Street. And I wasn't going to speak tonight because you've already heard me speak several times, but I just wanted to make a few notes because I have listened to a lot of things said. And if I had all the money in the world, I would take every one of them kids off the street. My husband knows. That I am a defender of children. I'm also a survivor of my own trauma and abuse. I was a rebel and a runaway and a foster kid. But I'm also a grown woman with 33 years of sobriety. Because there is a solution. There is a solution to addiction, and it certainly isn't oxytocin, and it isn't methadone, and it isn't recreational meth, and it isn't the local dispensary. There is a solution, and I've heard some people talk about a spiritual solution. There is a big spiritual solution to most of our problems that affect mankind. This isn't a political issue. This isn't a Medicare, Medicaid issue. And again, like I said last night, we're not here to legislate. But there is more harm than good being done. More harm than good. If we were to add up all of the people that are being harmed versus the number of people that are being helped for a few hours, not for their lifetime, but a few hours. We are tipping the scales here in a really obscured way. We do need more mental health resources, absolutely, and we need addiction resources. We lock our gates, we lock our home, we have cameras everywhere. I would definitely lock my house. I locked my house before the warming center came along, but we actually make sure and double check that our cars are locked because our cars have been attempted to be broken into. My neighbor's car was broken into. He had a weapon stolen from his vehicle. Things like that don't need to happen. It is the bad apples that can ruin it for everyone. But rules have a place in a civilized society, and this is why other shelters work. I am probably one of the most generous people I know with the limited resources that I have. I'm raising 3 kids I didn't give birth to, but they're my kids. I get so frustrated with what was already said about the misinformation. I mean, I don't know who invented that word. I'd like to crack them over the head, but it's such a retarded word. But the problem is we have a difference of opinion because we have one side of the spectrum that's actually being helped, that will swear and testify by the help they've received. And my heart hurts for those kids that are going to school, that need to shower, that need to do laundry, that need a place to go. And like I said, if I could take them all, I would take them all in a heartbeat. But we have suffered for years since the warming center opened. We have watched the decline in the quality of life in our neighborhood. We too have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in our property, just like all of my neighbors have done. You purchase a home, you invest in your home. It's no different than any business. It's no different than the $800,000 or so that the warming center has invested. We have a right to have our property protected. I have one basic rule in my house for my kids, and it's called being conscientious. We have to be conscientious of each other. That means if there's something on the ground, pick it up. It doesn't matter whose dirty dish it is, wash the damn thing. I mean, it's really simple. It says here that I made some notes here. One of the things I heard was that we have to work together and collaborate. But if we don't, what I found out last night is we get threatened by the attorney that was hired with all kinds of legal jargon. So if you don't behave the way I want you to, then I will threaten you. That's really nice. And, you know, this isn't about politics. I heard that, oh, it's about politics. I don't know why that has to be thrown in, because this isn't a political issue. And on the last note, I'll say, you know, we've had people knock on our door in the wintertime because they can't make it from our house to the shelter. They're that cold. And my husband will put them in our truck and he will give them a ride around the block and drop them off. We are not horrible, heartless people. We care. We care about what happens. And if there was someone freezing to death on my sidewalk, I would do something about it. I wouldn't stand there and watch them. And lastly, I've heard many people talk about the gentleman who was beaten to death behind the gas station. That is completely unacceptable behavior. It's absolutely atrocious, disgusting, abhorrent behavior. But what about the gentleman who worked at Access Fitness who was shot and killed by a homeless man? We can't forget that too. There are two sides to the spectrum. We have victims on both sides. We also have violence of homeless on homeless. So I don't believe that there is violent rhetoric being spewed by council or the mayor that are forcing people to behave in ways that they probably would already behave, especially if they were all strung out on dope. So anyway, once again, I'm still requesting that this conditional use permit be rescinded. I really do think that the location and the barrier, the low barrier style, does not fit in this community. But there does need to be a solution. There really has to be a replacement for that, something that actually works. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello again. My name is Colton Little. I live out in the county, 3195 Montana Highway 206. Thank you all for being here tonight and for showing up for your community to start. And I think that's important that we acknowledge that that's what we're all here for. We have shared set of goals that we want to reduce the suffering in our community for everyone, right? Now, the first time I was here, maybe it was a month ago or so, I spoke about my personal experience and how it informed my thoughts on the situation. That was my experience with having a cousin who was facing homelessness and was kicked out of his family housing, and he ended up moving in with us for a few years during both of our high school years, and I got to share a room with him. I'm delighted that I got to, but it's unfortunately not something that the majority of people can afford to do, even though, of course, I don't think there's a single soul that wouldn't want to, that wouldn't yearn to help their fellow family and community members. I also know that my family had some experience in the past. Well, we never faced homelessness in my nuclear family. That was nearly not the case in 2008. When I was 2 years old, we lived in Texas. Although we were from here, we moved to Texas for a few years when I was a baby. And as we moved back, there was a financial crisis. And in that, we were actually moving while that was happening. We moved back. I think we were in some apartments in Kalispell, and we also had to live with family that we luckily had in Columbia Falls. But we almost couldn't find renters in Texas. And if we hadn't, we wouldn't have been able to afford living here. We wouldn't have been able to afford being housed. You see, because right before that crisis happened, we had just purchased a home and got a mortgage on it, and it requires down payment and as well as recurring payments. We relied on that rental money for the recurring payments. And, well, we were this close to not being able to pay that mortgage and becoming indebted, losing the stability in our lives, for my parents and their 3 children. that's how close many people are today still, increasingly. In our valley, we are thousands of housing units short of where we need to be. We've known that for some time, and it's getting worse. There needs to be more done on that. I'd also like to talk about, we've heard multiple remarks tonight about what a homeless person looks like. Just the remark that you can actually go out and accurately identify who is who, that this person has a home, this person has a job, this person has a home or not, and that's simply not the case. You're not going to be able to tell all the time, and that's going to feed into our biases about what this community of people, the subgroup that are unhoused are like, what they do in their free time, that you don't see all of the people who are out there actively searching for housing and a job and going to try to make their life stable again, to get back on their feet, which is what the majority of people want in this community, including them. So I would just hope that we can all kind of check our biases on this, and at the same time, of course, we have people here who have those real experiences, dealing with those struggles, fearing for their property, their family, their safety, and their comfort, and also just the difficulty they have just being able to witness that this is happening in their community. And maybe, I would say that it's not anything new that someone's homeless, and that just because we don't want to see people being homeless, it's not always clear. The visibility of it doesn't always align with the reality of behind the scenes. You don't know who actually has housing. Some people are good at hiding it, others aren't. And that's what I'd like to get at today, is that, there's people here who live at the shelter, and I doubt that when they walked in the door, you immediately had them pegged down for someone who lived and relied on those services. But there are community members that do. So that's all I'd like to say tonight, and I hope that we can work together in the future to come to a solution for many of the problems that we have. It's not just going to be a single decision. It's going to be a lot of discussion, and it's going to be many choices that we make for our future. So thank you.
Sir.
Hi, my name is Sue Manson. I don't live in Kalispell. I live southeast of Kalispell, so I can't vote for any of you. But I heard that there was some perception that the people that were negatively impacted up here telling their stories, that they were making it up, or it wasn't true, or couldn't be proven, or whatever it is. And I'm not here to, I have a story to tell, but I also know that your agenda item is to look at the conditional use permit. I don't know how difficult of a decision that is for you guys, but I think what you have to do is stick to whether it's been violated. It doesn't, the emotion that has been brought before you, the political agendas, that has nothing to do with it. So I have a story. It's not about a homeless person. It is about a volunteer, employee, board member, donator, whatever they call themselves. Even though I don't live in town, I have a family member that is an employee of a business at a store, a grocery store, within walking distance of the shelter, greater than 150 feet. Volunteers come in there, representatives of this shelter, asking for employees to give them things. Loaves of bread, deli items, produce, meat, grocery items, I don't know. They go from one department to the other to see if an employee will give them something. The employees of the store know that the business policy is that anything that they are going to discard goes to the food bank. The employee tells this volunteer, everything goes to the food bank. Well, this is for a good cause. So they don't stop at the no. They want to try to guilt or make this employee violate their employment contract and try to give things away that they're not supposed to. So this isn't about homeless, or just about homeless. And that's all I have to say, so hopefully I didn't take up too much time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, council, for listening to everyone. I know it's been long. I'll try to make this short. My name is Kathy Sipes. I live at 125 Jubilee Court, which is directly west of the Warming Center, about a block. And I've personally seen public sex, a man laying on our sidewalk with a half a block of my house. We garden at the community garden place, and the lilac bush is there. There have been homeless that have kind of made their home there. So I don't go to the garden by myself. Only one time my husband is always there. The whole issue, to my understanding, is it was a conditional permit that was given, that there wouldn't be detriment to the people that live in the area. And I love Luke and the people that want to help the poor, and I do too. I volunteered for 2.5 years at the food bank. I go in every Monday, except when I first fractured my ankle and wasn't capable of doing it. But if you allow the Warming Center to stay, and what I ask is, what can you do that would make our neighborhood safe again, that there wouldn't be the problems that have been there in the neighborhood? And I realize I wasn't at last night's meeting, but I listened to most of it as much as I could, that it's ambiguous as to what a neighborhood is. 150 feet, a half of a mile. Biblically, the neighborhood from the Good Samaritan is anyone that you can help that is in your local area. So I feel that if you keep the Warming Center open, that my husband and I are going to have to probably relocate, because if it does expand, I don't think we could get any money out of our house that we would need. The prices have skyrocketed. And my husband will be 84 in a couple of months. I'm 76. I really don't want to have to move again. I love Kalispell. I don't know what you're going to do. You have a very difficult decision to make. But when you make it, please remember us that live in that area. I want to feel safe again. And I love the poor people. I deal with them. I work the information center at the food bank. I see these people come into the food bank. I'm familiar with them. It's not about that there isn't a need. There is a need. But what can you do to make us safe? Thank you.
Hello, councilmen and councilwomen. My name is Mrs. Rosos. I live at 1509 South Woodland Drive in Kalispell. I've been married 38 years. I am the matriarch of a large family. I have 13 grandchildren and 7 children, and I homeschooled 6 of them 31 years, and I'm telling you that for a reason. My husband and I took in homeless women, children, infants, very sick, very ill women, people with mental issues, and occasionally men, for a total of about 6 years into our home. So I know a great deal about homelessness, how it works, and how to deal with it. I was also mentored underneath Peggy Christensen for 8 years until her death, and she runs a Ray of Hope, and I've never seen anybody do such a fine job of dealing with the homeless. With that being said, I'm also a research journalist. I do a lot of investigation, a lot of research, and a great deal of writing. I have 2 women who are employees for me, a couple of secretaries, and one of them found out some research that I thought was quite interesting as she was researching Ray of Hope and the Warming Center. And she found some very odd things, and I do a lot of comparative analysis. So somebody here brought up the idea, or whatever, the concept of their 990 form. And so I did some research and I did some looking, and it was odd. Through the Charity Navigator and the Better Business Bureau, the Warming Center received a 69% in school. That's a D. A Ray of Hope received 100%. Now, the first year that they were open, from what I was reading, they took in I believe, over $900,000, the Warming Center did. They had 18 employees who were paid $285,000. And at the end, each year after that, they took in approximately about $800,000 each subsequent year. Okay, so, but what was odd that one of my employees found out, and she brought up to me, and she goes, I do a lot of research, and this is very odd. She goes, they have approximately $400,000 left over each year. A lot of people up here are like, we need solutions, we need to collaborate, we need solutions. I can tell you right now, you can do a great deal with $400,000 left over every single year. That's an odd thing to happen for nonprofits. By comparative analysis, A Ray of Hope takes in approximately, they've been open about 30 years, $300,000 to $250,000 every year, and they spend all of it. And that is what you're supposed to do ethically with a nonprofit. Now, since the Warming Center tends to have $400,000 left over, you can house a lot of people. We've had clergy who are concerned about all of this, and clergymen and different people and church parishioners and elders and deacons, and biblically that is their job. They should take in some of these people, and they can do it. And you know what? $400,000, you can pay $1,000 a month to house some of these people in your basement. There's a lot that you can do with that much money left over. Now, I do know for a fact that most of their big donors come from Whitefish. I also know that Whitefish it's illegal to house people in Whitefish. They have a no homeless ordinance, but most of their funding comes from there. I find that odd. I find that a conflict of interest. And I think that Whitefish and Columbia Falls and Hungry Horse and every place should have smaller little shelters. I think it is absolutely unbelievable that we have a low barrier shelter. I know for a fact that people are coming in, okay, from other places because they hear how wonderful it is here. My son, who went up one day just to visit with some of the people in line, asked where they were from. And the young man, about 20, said, there were several of them, we're from Everett, Washington. That's where we're from, and this is what we do. We go from place to place and shelter to shelter, and this is what we do. And we love this shelter. This one's great, and they are great. They have great food. They have great bedding. They have all these wonderful things there. But the problem is, he goes, but two women were beaten. It's scary in there sometimes. Two women were beating the crap out of each other in the bedroom in there. Why are these people let in? I can tell you, because they lie. And they're sheltered that doesn't require any ID. So you know what these people do? They lie. There's a lot of solutions to shelters like these. How about a quiz? Tell me the two largest parks in Kalispell. Can you tell me the name of 3 grocery stores in Kalispell? Can you tell me the name of the 2 biggest high schools? There's a lot of ways to screen people. There's a lot going on. I am begging you, and I love homeless people, and I can tell you I have probably more experiences staying up and counseling women into the middle of the night. Well, I had a toddler, and they had a baby they were nursing, and these were people that couldn't even, churches wouldn't even take them in. I've done this for years and years and years, and I'm asking you to rescind this conditional use permit because I believe that it's dangerous. And I believe that because it's open, others are hearing how awesome this is, and they're prowling around the neighborhoods. On April 17th, there was an overdose to the point where a woman almost died of fentanyl and she was turning blue. There was a woman who is a volunteer employee, and she was going into how wonderful it was that the warming center could help this woman. And they were giving her Narcan, and they called and they got her to 911, whatever, and she got to the hospital. There were other women that night, she revealed, chomping on fentanyl and eating it in a bathroom there. And a lot of people gave her kudos. And I thought to myself, this woman was so close to death. If she had died that night, there would be police tape all the way around the warming center, and that place would have been immediately shut down, and they would have been an accomplice to a crime. This is not how these things are supposed to be handled. This is scary, and this is dangerous. I have, like I said, I've taken care of a lot of homeless people. I know what's going on with them. A lot of them, especially in the drug world, are very, very manipulative, and they'll do anything. These people were taking this in there. Here's what's going to happen. I predict if you do not shut this place down, I believe a coffee shop girl worker will get raped and killed. I believe that little 4-year-olds will be munching on fentanyl pills. I believe it's going to get far, far worse. And how on earth can they have this massive expansion going on when they cannot handle what they've got going on now? They don't screen people well enough. People talk a lot up here, and I've heard people talking about scriptures and this and that and the other thing. What's very scriptural is to take the orphan and the widow and the homeless and the poor and the unsheltered into your home. You take care of them into your home. And the ones that do not, you have $400,000. There's a lot of shelter that can happen with that much extra. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the council, pardon?
Mayor Johnson, sorry to interrupt, but can you just remind people about the respect of other people's comments and be quiet while other people are talking, please?
Yeah, if we can be quiet. I mean, I've allowed the clapping to go because I've noticed everyone's clapping for everybody for once, not necessarily just one side or the other, but yes, please, as people are commenting, keep it quiet. Proceed, sir.
Members of council and my neighbors and friends in attendance, thank you very much for your patience and forbearance and taking an opportunity to listen, hear everyone out on this issue. My name is Ken Van Allen. I am a homeowner at 390 6th Avenue West North, stone's throw away from the warming center. I have, been witness to my home is right across the street from Washington Park. I've been witness to folks sleeping in Washington Park all times of the day or night, coming and walking across my yard on the way to the warming center. In one instance, stopping to sleep on my porch on their way to the warming center. People digging through my garbage, looking around for things left out on the property. And yet I'm here to say that I'm in favor of the warming center continuing as it is where it is. However, I recognize that there are problems associated with this. If you don't have the warming center, you are still going to have the homeless. Without the warming center, there's still the homeless. Without shelters, they're still going to come. They're going to be dispersed around our community, and it might not be so noticeable. It might not be so simple to, point a finger at a particular instance or set of instances, develop an idea, based on a pattern of behavior that is concentrated in one place that's right in front of you, where you're seeing somebody walk across your yard, sleeping on your porch, sleeping in the park across the street, littering, digging through your garbage, snooping around your place, right? My perspective comes from my proximity. That part of the perspective. However, I have in the past had ample opportunity, going back 40 years before today, to work with the homeless on the street in places like the Union Gospel Mission in Tacoma, Gospel Mission in Seattle, out on the streets of Everett, Bremerton, the vicinity when I lived out there. And seeing these problems come here is distressing, but I do recognize that shutting down shelters in and of itself is not a solution, right? Perhaps some other solution could be found, a hybrid solution where the warming center stays in place, the conditional use permit stays in place. However, for those individuals who are unable to meet the barrier requirements for housing in the shelter, there is some policy supported by the public, by the city and its resources to encourage, in whatever way might be legal, dispersion of these individuals so that they're not all concentrated in the neighborhood when they don't have a place to go, regardless of the reason, right? Regardless of whether they're there because they're too drunk to go into the warming center, they're unwilling to part with their next fix, or they're not willing to go in because they're afraid of somebody who has already gone in, right? Perhaps there could be a solution that involves active, persistent dispersion of individuals so that they're not concentrated in that area, and they're encouraged to move on. I do not share the perspective of the woman who spoke before me, that we're looking at an impending disaster, that we're going to see 4-year-olds dead in the street and people being yanked out of their coffee houses and raped. And I just think that that's terribly alarmist. And I would encourage us to look at what's actually gone on, all the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And to consider those things and consider the property rights of the owners around, and find a solution that balances the need for people who are going to be here in our community with the needs of the homeowners at this particular place, right? So maybe the solution looks like, for example, instead of expanding a single location for a warming center, opening another location, right? So that the problem isn't further concentrated in one place, right? I don't come to you as a sociologist. I don't come to you as, somebody who has vast experience beyond standing in a soup line and, shoveling out soup to folks and encouraging them as best I can. I'm just a homeowner in the area who, shares compassion for my fellow man. Please don't shut it down. Just try to find a way to work with the warming center folks and with the community to abate the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Donna McKiernan. I'm a 26-year resident of this wonderful town. And I wasn't going to say anything because it's all been said before, but I have been a volunteer there for a few years. And as a former RN, I have a little bit of experience with mentally ill. I sadly have a relative who is an addict and has been all over this valley, but never in the warming shelter, causing all kinds of problems. And so I think the only thing that I want to say as you're thinking about what to do is remember that there is crime all over this valley. I spend way too much time on the 411 Flathead, and every night I see people writing in and having pictures of this piece of you-know-what who just stole my car out of the driveway, and it had nothing to do with the homeless shelter or homeless people. And I wish there was a way to compare the police logs of the number of times that our homeless people that we've sheltered are landing there, as opposed to all the other people who are committing crimes around this valley. So I empathize with all of you who live near there, who are having such terrible times with it. Just remember, it's everywhere, and it's not just the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi there. My name is Britta Sago. I live on the south end of Kalispell, and I am an employee. I know nobody wants to hear from me. I'm speaking more as a mom. Mrs. Roscoe's statement was very concerning. I bring my children to the warming center. I have a 3-year-old, I have a 6-year-old, and I have a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old regularly volunteers. She's made good friends with Miss Chris, who's in the back, and she was actually at this meeting, but it was getting a little late for her. My middle kiddo's hyperactive, so I don't bring him as much because he just stresses everyone out. And my 3-year-old comes every now and then when we don't have a babysitter for my husband to go to work. Making an accusation that being homeless means that you are a murderer or a rapist stokes so much fear, which turns to violence. We've seen this happen time and time again, and even in our own community. We have people who are violent sexual offenders who live in houses. We have drug addicts who live in houses and hold jobs. We have alcoholics that live in houses and hold jobs. And we have homeless people who are alcoholics and hold jobs. and we have homeless people who aren't alcoholics and maybe don't have a job. I serve all walks of people in the warming center, and I have never felt not safe. There have been moments that are concerning, but I will also say I'm a Bachelor of Social Work. In the state of Montana, you can't call yourself a social worker if you're not licensed, and I am not. But I've previously worked in Crisis House, which is no longer open, on the campus of Western Montana Mental Health. Many of the people that I serve today at the warming center were members of the Western Montana Mental Health community back in 2019, 2018. These people are chronically mentally ill, and the services just keep getting removed. At that time, we also had a day center at the Western Montana Mental Health Center. That's why you didn't see everyone out walking around. I released people from the crisis house, barely stabilized on their medication due to the requirements of our programs, and the only place they had to go was the warming center. But they could come back the next day to Western Montana and be inside and being safe. Many of my colleagues from Western Montana Mental Health Center are associated with the warming center. We take people who are in crisis, who are on cyclical injections to maintain their schizophrenia, and we know when we need to reach out to their support people because they're not able to, and their support people come to us. The warming center is keeping us safe, and there are bad people. There are people from all demographics who are causing problems in our community, and we need more services. But to accuse the warming center of breeding rapists is truly terrifying for what implications that could lead to. As a mom, my kids have seen people in crisis in our community. There's a person who yells on a microphone. I've never met this person at the warming center. My kids were scared, and I said, that person is very scared. He's confused, and he's trying to warn us of something that's not a concern. And they said, okay. And now they know what a person in crisis is. Take this opportunity to talk to your kids. Bipolar and schizophrenia doesn't onset until late teens and early 20s. Your children could be suffering with this and you don't even know it yet. And when it comes to a place where it's not safe to have them in your home and you don't know how to handle it, I would hope that we have a community and professionals that can come together and hold them up, because it is not acceptable for it to be put on individual citizens to deal with mental health crises. That's dangerous. But there's professionals in so many different groups in this community that are willing to work on it. So I would just encourage you to keep working towards solutions and make this a better place, not just exacerbate our homelessness problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ruth Probert, and I live at 946 and a half 6th Street West. So my ex-husband actually helped build the warming center. He's with Maverick Electric. He donated, I believe, $10,000 or something to build it. And I don't know if you all are aware, but I was homeless at one point. But I was homeless as a result of the person who built the warming center. He beat me up, changed the locks on our door. The divorce was not finalized yet, so I didn't really have a whole lot of people to lean on at the time. I had no place to go. So the people who built the warming center, obviously it was in its embryonic stages, this was in 2018, but the same people who built the warming center created homelessness for me. So I just don't look very kindly on the warming center, because I know the hearts of some of the people are right who volunteer there, who built it and things. But I also know that some of them, namely my ex-husband, Jamie and Michael Gogan, they don't always have the best motives. It's to create this false sense of righteousness when in their own homes they are doing extreme evil. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Good evening. It still is nighttime, isn't it? Not middle of the morning.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Pam Carbonari, and I live at 21 Honeysuckle Lane in Kalispell. As you know, I am a former mayor of the city of Kalispell, and also have my picture back there, like Mayor Hopkins said, and also served 2 terms as a city council member. I recognize the complex issue you have before you tonight. I was unable to attend the meeting last evening, but watched the entire meeting today at home, luckily because I'm retired now. The representatives from the Warming Center last evening clearly spoke about what they offer, the services they offer, and the guidelines in which they operate under, and how they met the conditional use permit requirements. I'm here this evening to urge you to reject Resolution 6213. This is not a local problem. It's a national issue. We've been talking about unsheltered local citizens for years in this community. It appears as though we are quite capable of identifying homeless issues, but not in working together to find solutions. Local citizens made a commitment to offer one segment of a hands-up approach by offering a warm bed at night during the coldest of our seasons. They connect our local citizens with services, offer a shower and laundry facilities, and connect them to mental health services that are available in our community. They offer dignity to a segment of our community that doesn't often receive that. I understand that some council members have heard from some city residents that they do not want the warming shelter in their neighborhood, and we've heard from some this evening. They blame the shelter for bringing an unwanted element to their neighborhood. There will always be NIMBYs. Our community is no different, especially in this growing community that we have in Kalispell. Back in 2012, we were hearing about the transient homeless population along the railroad tracks through downtown, in Woodland Park, in Lawrence Park. And I know that our citizens today are still talking about those issues, and they're registering their complaints. Last night, you heard from some citizens and business owners about downtown issues. I heard about those issues regularly as the past executive director of the Business Improvement District and the Downtown Association. I heard about those issues for over 15 years, let alone the issues when I was mayor and when I served on city council with all of you. And now we're encouraging additional residential areas along the Parkline Trail, but the issues still exist. Elimination of the Flathead Warming Center is not going to help the unsheltered issues we are facing. An attempt to terminate the CUP, which was authorized in 2020 and again in 2022, is not a solution. And by the way, this is not, as you all know, but some of the people in the audience have spoken, it is not a renewal of the CUP. It's a potential revocation. This will do nothing but cost our city an enormous amount of legal funds and continue to create a negative and hostile environment in our community. Instead, let's work together to discuss the issues at hand and find more puzzle pieces to create a community that we can all be proud to be a part of. The Flathead Warming Center is offering a piece of that puzzle. What can the city of Kalispell bring? Let's work together. Let's look at other communities that have discovered some working solutions. As Tanya Horn said last evening, will it be revocation or collaboration? Let's go forward with collaboration. I hope it's about collaboration. I thank you for your time this evening and for your time serving the citizens of Kalispell.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other public comment? You would do that to me, wouldn't you? I hate Zoom.
If you'd like to provide public comment online, please raise your virtual hand. I am not seeing anyone.
Going.
There's 13 of them, but.
Okay. There's no other public comment. I'm going to close public comment. Before we jump into deliberation, I have a couple comments and something I want to talk with council about. When I listen to the testimony, when we look at issuing a conditional use permit, it is a land use decision. It is quasi-judicial. We have a responsibility at the council level to pass judgment when we issue it. Potential for revocation, we pass judgment. When I look at the issues that are presented to us, there's issues within the conditional use permit application, which is part of the permit, that I have some concerns with, that I have some distinct concerns with, about whether or not the intent of what was stated in the application are being met. But on the flip side, we also talked about communication in the past. So as I look at the application, there's a couple things. Ms. Horn, you've commented, perception is an important issue. Perception is very important in the management of a homeless shelter. Misconception regarding, wrong perceptions often lead to serious misconceptions regarding the homeless community. You talk about safety. We talk about being a good neighbor. Our policies and procedures also support the same for the neighborhood. We've had a lot of discussion about what is neighborhood. 150 feet, half a mile along Meridian Drive. The half mile, when that was introduced, it was really looking at what are the call volumes for police? What are those done while the shelter's open, while the shelter's closed? And those are, there's some statistics there that are deeply concerning with what happens when it's open versus when it's closed. I'm concerned that there are issues with compliance with the permit. That said, when I look at the slide and I look at that comment, we can revoke or we can collaborate. The other thing as a council, when we look at these issues, we have two options. We can take black and white binary action or we can take other alternate actions. I think this is a point, we have time on our side at this point in time. It's still summer. We have a lot of issues that have been communicated. Luke, I'm going to ask you a pointed question. Have you learned things from your community that you didn't realize were happening out there?
Yes.
I understand when we learn things, we can change our behaviors. We can modify what we do. I think to make a binary decision at this point in time is a rash decision. What I'd like to consider is taking a 60-day pause. What term do we use, Mr. Dowd? Postpone? Postponement. Not a table, it's postponement. What What I'm looking at with postponement is I want to give Luke, I want to give Tanya the time to work with your community. I want to talk to those neighbors. You've heard their concerns. Can you come up with solutions that answer those concerns? Can they be measured? Can they be operated? And I see some people shaking head yes and no. But for 60 days to understand if there's something that can be done to save a resource versus having to rebuild a resource is one thing. To find a solution that works could be incredible. I don't want to make a rash judgment, see something slip away that is extremely hard to replace if there's a way to modify how it's operated, how it behaves within, and what is measurable. I would like to ask for time from the council for them to have that time to come back and see if they can present a plan. Working with some of your biggest critics to help lead that effort. You know, I always look at who gives comments during public comment, who might be someone that I can ask to help. Someone who can step above the rhetoric. And I know he's a volunteer there, but I would like to see if our former school superintendent, Mark Flateau, would accept that task to see if he can bridge a gap between the operations, the staff at the warming center, the communications, work with your community, work with your neighborhood. And when I talk neighborhood, I'm not talking 150 feet away. When we discussed this application, we talked about the neighborhood being Meridian. See if we can find a way to bridge the gaps, to break down those barriers, to find a way to maintain this facility, have it operate as a good neighbor within that, and reestablish those communication lines. I think we owe it to the warming center. I think we owe it to the community to give ourselves 60 days to see if they can come up with that option. And if they can't, at that point in time, we have a tough decision. But I think to get 60 days right now, to give that time, isn't the worst expenditure of time at this point. So I just want to throw that out to council, some thoughts that I had as we weigh on this. Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just because it did come out in the Interlake and tonight, Jamie, thank you for that. I wanted to reach out, and if it's okay, I'd like to ask our city attorney if she has an opinion on if what I am facing is a conflict of interest within that according to the MCA.
I read the Daily Interlake this morning and I saw that and I was prepared for this, so bear with me. I'm going to go through a lot of code and I'm going to ask you some questions, okay?
Okay.
So section 2-33 of our City of Kalispell Code says that every member of City Council, the city attorney, and the city manager shall be subject to the code of ethics provisions of state law that prohibit conflict between public duty and private interest. So then we go to state code.
Okay.
We're in Title II, Chapter 2 of the Montana Code Annotated. It's the Code of Ethics. 22103, the holding of public office is a public trust. We get into 22104, a public officer may not disclose or use confidential information acquired in the course of official duties in order to further substantially the individual's personal economic interests or accept any gifts. I don't think that applies. Do you?
No.
Public officer, we're in 22105-1, may not acquire an interest in an undertaking that the officer had reason to believe may be directly and substantially affected to its economic benefit by official action to be taken by the officer's agency. Again, direct and substantial effect to your economic benefit. It's kind of a high standard. I don't think it applies. Do you?
No.
I'm on to 22105-4. This is an interesting one. when a public employee who is a member of a quasi-judicial board or commission of a board, commission, or committee with rulemaking authority is required to take official action on a matter as to which the public employee has a conflict created by a personal or private interest that would directly give rise to an appearance of impropriety as to the public employee's influence, benefit, or detriment in regard to the matter, the public employee shall disclose the interest creating the conflict prior to participating in an official action. So what this says to me is that if we feel or you feel there's an appearance of impropriety directly to do with you as your public employee's influence, benefit, or detriment, so this is yours, not the county's, this says you should disclose it. Whether or not it's an appearance of impropriety, I'm going to leave up to you. I will say there is a section that says that a private interest can be employment.
Okay.
Moving on, I'll have you come back and address that maybe in a moment.
Okay.
22121 talks about rules of conduct for public officers and public employees. I read all of them. The closest one that I think applies specifically to you, it's wordy and it's a little confusing, so bear with me.
Okay.
A public officer or public employee may not participate in a proceeding when an organization other than an organization or association of local government officials, of which the public officer or public employee is an officer or director, is B, attempting to influence a local, state, or federal proceeding in which the public officer or public employee represents the state or local government. So I'm going to read it again, but I'm going to sub in your name because I think it makes it clear. So, Sam Nunnally may not participate in a proceeding when an organization other than an organization or association of local government officials, of which Sam Nunnally is an officer or director, is attempting to influence a local, state, or federal proceeding in which the public officer or public employee represents the state or local government. When I read that and I read it with your name, I think it specifically applies to someone in your role. You are both a public employee and a public officer. We have the caveat, other than an organization or association of local government officials, which applies to both the city and the county. So either way you read it, to me, this says that you do not have a conflict.
Okay.
So let's loop back up to your appearance of impropriety. For the sake of argument, if there is an appearance of impropriety, your duty is to disclose. Is there anything that you would like to disclose?
So I am a paid employee of Flathead County as the Flathead County Fairgrounds manager. I do not accept any other money, and I do not communicate with the county commissioners or any other elected official within Flathead County of how my vote would be, or in any way, shape, or form would they have direct impact over my vote. If I were to take a vote and it doesn't, that's on me, right? And at no point has any county commissioner or any elected official tried to pressure me in any way with threat or coercion to change my vote.
I'm satisfied if you're satisfied.
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Mr. Dowd?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that in order to give the Flathead Warming Center time to collaborate with the North Meridian Corridor community, this agenda item referred to as Resolution 6213, potential action on conditional use permit of Flathead Warming Center be postponed until the next available council meeting at least 60 days after this date.
Second.
Second, Ms. Carlson. Motion, second, discussion on the motion. Well, it's Mr.
I
Dowd.
may address my motion, Your Honor. All right, so I made this motion primarily in response to the Warming Center's assertion that they have not heard most of the issues brought to this council from the neighborhood, as well as the Warming Center's plea for collaboration and communication. Don't confuse this city council with the county commissioners to include any statements or acts that they have presented. I just need to throw that in there. We have received an alarming amount of public comment from the North Meridian area residents relaying negative experiences that they attribute to the warming center. We on this council have to consider that the Meridian Corridor community has to shoulder any burdens that may be a negative byproduct of the warming center, as well as considering the warming center and its rights. I have no doubt that the warming center provides an incredibly valuable service to its customers. We on council here are not, but unfortunately, we on council are not here to promote altruism. We represent the community, and our job is to execute the will of the people. As the warming center intake is at the center itself, consider what the people that are turned away do and where they go. If this motion passes, please keep all of this in mind during the time given to you. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think there's something missing from the proposal, which is the city. To put all the burden on the warming center to address the problems in the community, there's a policing issue that needs to be discussed. There are solutions that the city can bring to the table, like public bathrooms in our parks in the area. I don't think it's fair to put all the burden on the warming center to address an issue that is incredibly complex and difficult, and it's also our responsibility. So I agree with collaboration. I agree with kind of taking the input and seeing what we can do with it and exploring ideas, but there needs to be more people at the table, warming center and the neighbors.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. May we discuss your proposal that goes with this of Mr. Flateau? Is that acceptable at this point?
Mr. Flateau?
I'm certainly willing to have a conversation.
Okay.
I am retired.
Okay.
I have lots of grandchildren.
I agree with the two councilmen on each side of me about this time, but somewhat with Mr. Hunter. But I think there needs to be a business owner that's been affected from that neighborhood that needs to be very involved, or a homeowner. It's beyond just the city and the warming center. I appreciate your comments, but Mr. Tinseth, one of these neighbors who has been affected, has spoke up each time. I think there needs to be that representation. And again, I have so much respect for Mark, and I know he is a supporter, but I just want all those voices to be heard and at the table of things that we have heard time and time again need to be part of it, from transportation in the neighborhood to sexual hex in the neighborhood and drugs, and all that needs to be a part of it. To me, when the mountain climber went away, it was a big changing factor. I think transportation, a van, should have been one of the first things that, if I was running that, and I'm not bashing Miss Horn at all here either, but these people need to be taken someplace to get to a job if they want to work, or to counseling, or I don't care, down to the river to fish. To not have transportation affects this neighborhood so much, with people just dispersed. And if you're not one of the lucky 50, and it's a cold night, they're going to stay within that neighborhood. There needs to be so many things brought into this that needs to be heard from somebody in that neighborhood, business owner, the hair salon across the place, whatever it's called, a homeowner that sees it each and every day. We all get to go home a different ward, up to Whitefish, Highway 206. Young man, you have spoken so eloquently every time, but you don't see it every day. You don't see it. But you are very good at what you do in presenting your belief in this, as are many. But it has to be somebody that sees it each and every day, like we all don't.
And so my thought would be, representatives from that whole corridor who've been affected, talking with Mr. Flateau, talking with Warming Center to work through, if there's a way to work through those issues. Mr. Dowd?
Yeah, I just like to clarify, when I mentioned the North Meridian Corridor community, the city's part of that community. Now, we as city government cannot direct a private entity to do anything, right?
It's a suggestion.
I'm just hoping that this time is used for specifically coming to the table with all entities, not just the warming center, not just the city, but also the neighbors that have brought forward these issues and the businesses that have as well. So I'm asking for them to use this time wisely, but I can't direct them as a city government to do anything. I'm just hoping that that's what this time is used for.
I feel the same way too. I'm not trying to direct, and I also think it's broader. Where is Whitefish? Come to the table. So many are so concerned. They should be brought into the conversation. Columbia Falls, I agree with. Others should step up to the plate here too. I don't imagine everybody that's not in a home wants to be just in Kalispell. That would be nice.
But
to
remember,
broaden it.
what we're discussing is a conditional use permit.
Exactly.
The impact in Meridian. That is the crux of this matter. So, and then there's a broader topic, obviously, of conversation.
But that should take place in this 60-day timeframe to.
That's within the 60-day timeframe with all those groups.
Not going to happen?
No.
We're looking at Meridian.
Yep.
We're looking at this conditional use permit, the immediate neighborhood impacted. That's what we need to look at.
Understood.
It's the operation of the facility within that neighborhood. Because as we say, I mean, I think Ms. Horn, you commented in one of your deals, we operate within the neighborhood by invitation from the neighborhood, by the grace of the neighborhood. There's some language such as that in one of the many documents. So that's where I'm looking at with this. I don't want to have Mr. Flateau look and go, whoa, I'm retired.
I think Mark should deal with the entire state, the country. He says he's retired.
So that's, begets the question, is this something that y'all are interested in, Tanya and Luke?
So respectfully, I'm not supposed to comment. That's what the
Okay.
lawyer said.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm one of those that I am going to just address the whole political thing right now. It's funny that I'm the one. I serve on a political affiliated board on the national side, and yet in my own neighborhood and state, I'm told I'm not part of that party. I can say for certainty that this is not a political thing in any way, shape, or form. What I do feel is that when you come to an obstacle, a hurdle, anything in life, right? There's two ways you can absolutely do it, right? You can never go over that hurdle, or you can work to get over that hurdle. If you stop and do nothing, that's failure. If you try to work as a group, I think that's where you can find some amazing things that can happen. And in that, I think back to Nick Homsinger made a talk a long time ago at a organization that I was on, talking about public safety, and he talked about I believe it was Mecklenburg, Virginia, and they were in the middle of trying to decide how to build a jail, and the community was divided of how that would happen. And in that community, they stopped. They stopped at that critical point where both sides felt like they could go no further. And at that point, they came together to try to work on solutions. And what was amazing was what came out of that was both sides came away looking at, they would have never come to the decision that they came to that ultimately made that community way better in how they dealt with their jail system within Mecklenburg, Virginia. I think about that and what Nick had to say about that many times. Over the last 2 days sitting here, it's a tough thing. Low barrier. As a Christian, I have a hard time with low barrier. because we're not to just encourage sin. We're supposed to provide that help and direction to get out of that sin. We're not to condone that sin. We're to come over that sin and show the right way. So I came into this meeting, I got to tell you, from that perspective, thank you for those that tried to say if we were Christian or not. As a Christian, it's our way to try to show that light. And I think we're in a community today where we have those obstacles that we have both faced and hit the wall. And I look at the folks in this room on both sides of the political spectrum, both sides of the Christianity, or maybe not Christianity spectrum, or wherever it is. I think this is the time that we come together. And I when you first brought it up, I don't really like this solution. So I'm going to ask on a couple things. We take this time period to have a break, and for Mark to reflect and work with the entire community, not just one side or both sides, or I would like to see the whole spectrum of everybody that's participated in this be able to have a say in what their community will be on the outcome of this. But what I want to know is, how do we measure what that is? And if we take those measurements, and what do we do if it doesn't find that we meet the measurements that we want? From that perspective, I have to ask those questions of, what are we measuring? How are we going to measure it? And what do we do if we don't meet those measurements?
As I think through this, it's 60 days to work, try to find a solution that is palatable to both sides. Community as a whole, because really what we're seeing is a lot of the community as a whole doesn't feel like they've been heard. Doesn't feel like their concerns or their issues are willing to be addressed or even known by the warming center. So the question is there a way to come forward in 60 days so we can say, here is a way we think we can move forward, meet the needs of the warming center, meet the needs of the community, and yes, we get buy-in to move forward. A little bit of arbitration that has to happen with that. But what I'm looking for solutions that are out of the box.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it comes back to a binary decision at this point in time.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could this open up conditions for revisiting? I wasn't involved. I feel for everyone involved at that time during COVID. I watched you, a council I respect a great deal, many of you who have served a long time. Everybody in your living room, I noticed, with your headphones on, approving this, and the warming center having to present at that point, the public engagement not really there. People may not have tuned in or been as involved as they are tonight, which should always be the process. I think there was a real timing problem for both parties. I think there was some things that the city could have done and better communication, almost the evaluation of said conditional use permit at 6 months, a year, better communication. I think the timing was very tough for you all. And I probably would have done the same thing, right? I see where all your compassionate hearts, and I know working with you what you're like, but can it open up a better dialogue in conditions and needs for the community and neighbors and businesses? That would be the ultimate goal I would hope for that could come out of this.
And I'll leave it wide open to them.
Okay.
Who will be the representative from the city to participate? And
my thought would be Mr. Russell will get planning director, or Jared, because the other side of this is we're quasi judicial. When we come back, we've still got to make a decision in 60 days.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the directive is for the city. You're talking about the warming center addressing the concerns that was brought forward by their permit with the community. Are you saying do you want us to dictate that? Which will just result in pushback. So I'm not sure what the idea is from the goal is.
Yeah, so not dictating, certainly. I don't think that'd be appreciated.
Exactly, and that's, sometimes even opinions aren't appreciated.
Well, that's going to be on all sides. I think everybody's going to struggle with that, with very different perspectives going into it.
But what I'm asking for is, what do you see that role being?
So-
Because this is, what we're talking about, the issue tonight is a conditional use permit that, and the concerns about the neighborhood issues related to it. So do you see us stepping in to solve that?
So I'm going off of what the proposal is, right? And-
Proposals to have, that's, I'm asking Mr. Flateau if he would be basically kind of mediator on that.
Right. Yeah, facilitate a discussion between different parties who have different perspectives to try to resolve very challenging problems in the neighborhood. I don't think if we send in the warming center and the neighbors, I think it's going to fail. I'll be honest. I don't foresee an outcome that is going to work, because the problem is there's a lot of reliance on the warming center to solve all the problems, and they can't. They can't solve everybody's problem. They can't. They can't do it. They don't have the power. They don't have the, they can't mind control people in the neighborhood. So then if it's brainstorming ideas of how can we improve the situation, we're not going to solve it. It's not going to happen. So improve the situation, kind of lessen the extremity of it. It's going to take resources that are beyond the warming center. The city has resources. So it's about the city coming to the table, being part of the discussion, and saying, I have an idea, we can help with it. The police department can step in and do whatever, up patrols, or, I don't know. The police department has that expertise. They can offer ideas of what more they can do. We can talk about, like I said, bathrooms in public parks.
I think what I'm looking at here right now, Mr. Hunter, is a way for the warming center and the Meridian community to see if they can come to some of the best resolutions they can come to. They might have some resource requests that come out of that back to the city, and that would be for us to address at that point. What we're looking at is a conditional use permit right now, and the question is, are they complying with the conditional use permit as it was issued? The assertions that were made, the promises that were made about operating, are they complying with those items within that permit? Are they having a negative detrimental impact on the neighborhood since they've been open? Those are the concerns. And what I want them to do is have that communication, that conversation along that Meridian corridor to see, can they themselves work out the issues where we don't have to say yes or no? Or if we vote to revoke it and then plead, come back for a new permit with new conditions. We've heard multiple people say tonight, is there a middle line road we can take? I'm trying to give them the opportunity for that midline road to see, is there a way to make it work without us making one decision or the other at this point in time. 60 days for conversation to see what can come out of that.
I think more folks who have potential to participate in that and offer ideas will result in a better outcome, is my thinking. In terms of the conditional use permit, at some point we'll get to that discussion. I'm very skeptical of the idea that we even have the authority to remove that.
We're of differing opinions.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get to that conversation.
Mr. Fisher.
Your Honor, I appreciate, I stayed awake. We all have a lot over this. I think it just is another cool down period. I think your thought process is valid, and I will be supporting this timeframe for all parties.
Okay. Other discussion? I have a roll call vote.
You're on.
Oh, you did. Oh, my God. You raise your hand. Thank you, whoever that was.
I guess I see where the intent of this is, and I've been sitting here thinking, like I said yesterday, I support the warming center and what they do. The view from this issue is much different on this side of the dais. As elected officials, we need to respond to our constituents. And that's what we're doing. That's what this whole process is. And, you know, we got the response from the warming center, and this is, I think, where I'm kind of hung up here. We got the response from the warming center, and what I got out of that was that they found a way to go through, and they did respond to it, but the response was that they're not responsible for the stuff that they're in compliance with the conditional use permit. So it's kind of at a loggerhead here. I don't believe they're in compliance in certain areas of the conditional use permit. However, that doesn't mean automatically yanking it out either. I like the idea of trying to exhaust all options, but I don't know where the warming center stands on that. I don't know where the neighborhood stands on that. And so I see what you're saying is like a final 60
days.
Like to see, and I don't know, is that like a working group that the neighborhood would put together that would go through and take concerns or take ideas to Mr. Flateau, to the warming center? Is he a mediator? Maybe he's a mediator between the two. I do know communication does go and solve a lot of things. And I guess it's just hold on a second. I guess I'll end what I'm saying with how I started this whole thing. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the 60 days. I started this out. I want what I was told to be true. I don't believe that everything that's happening there is happening the way that it was written and proposed to me. The 150 feet, sorry, that's not a thing. That was mentioned by some of warming center staff that they don't know where, well, by a warming center staff member, board member, they don't know where that came from, because it surprised them when they heard it too. That was not a thing when we did this. We need to work on that. The loitering aspect of it, that's a big thing in the application permit. Need to work on that. And I think that perhaps because the community lives where they live, they know what's going on, perhaps they're the ones to go through and say, hey, let's, I don't want to be pie in the sky and think that this is going to go through and be something that's productive. I'm grasping at straws here because I don't want to lose an asset either. I look at it as an asset. And I think that maybe one of the things where things get a little bit messed up here is I'm not really quite sure if the warming center understands that if they kick somebody out because of their behavior, you're responsible for them and what they do. It doesn't end at your door. That's what it says in the application material. We're going to call the police to make sure they've left the neighborhood. Well, why would you do that? Because you're telling them that they have to leave the neighborhood, but that's not happening. Or if, you know, if there's 50 and 10 of them don't get in, if they hang around the neighborhood, you have attracted them to the neighborhood. That's one of the problems, I think, maybe where we're not connecting here, is that if you're attracting people there and they're not getting in, you're responsible for, you know, what they're doing. You've brought that impact to the neighborhood. So I want to go through and, you know, the thing is there's a lot of people here tonight that I'm sure look at me as an incompassionate, hateful person, because I'm kind of the tip of the spear on this. I brought this up. You wouldn't believe the phone call I got yesterday before I came here yesterday and what they called me. And it wasn't somebody from the neighborhood, because they would not call me that. And I sit up here And I see how some of you look at me. I'm not hateful. I'm not incompassionate. I'm an elected official. I'm responding to my constituents. And this is hard. The hardest thing I've ever done on this council. I want to flesh this out. I want this to work, and I want what I was told when this started to be true. I want to help people. But there is some gray area here where we're having a problem. So I'm going to support it. I'm going to vote in favor of doing the 60 days. I don't know where it lands, though. I mean, I don't think any of us do. But
Other discussion? Ms. Gabriel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Great conversation. And I guess my hope from this would be that, and if anyone can do the mediating, it's Mr. Flateau, who was one of my board members once upon a time when I managed a nonprofit. And he has great skill in that area, and he's fair. And I think if the conversations can happen, that's a great place to start. What I hope to see come out of this is that the neighborhood residents, i.e. taxpayers, and then also my constituents directly, this is my ward, Ms. Carlson and I both represent this ward. I want the residents of that ward, as well as the folks that are guests at the warming center and working there, to feel safe. It breaks my heart to know that so many people don't feel safe in our neighborhood. I don't walk at night anymore. That's my favorite time to walk, and I just don't do it anymore. I haven't done it for a number of years, and just knowing that people are fearful. But what really sets with me is, and I don't remember the lady's name that spoke, is, please let us feel safe again in our own community. So hopefully we can have that conversation. And I don't agree with, I know where you're going with it in spirit, Mr. Hunter, but I think we have to completely stay out of it from the city, whether we're elected or employees. If they ask for advice or ask for information, absolutely. But I think we have to step aside if there's going to be a conversation that takes place that is going to be pure in form. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Any other discussion? Have a roll call vote.
Counselor Fisher? Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. City manager report. Anything from last night?
Yeah, no, same as last night. Meet next Monday, then the following Monday is the fifth Monday. And so we won't be meeting that night. So that's all.
Okay. Anything from council? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I hate to bring it up after such a long meeting, but
Oh, we're not quite done yet, please. Mr. Hunter?
yeah, we did have public comment about kind of cruising in the community, and I've been reluctant to bring that up because I personally don't like it, and I don't want to bring just my own personal bias. But we've heard enough public comment against it in the community, people really being upset, feeling it's dangerous, it's noisy, it's polluting, that I feel now compelled that maybe we should discuss it and address it. I know it's a tough issue to police. I've seen videos online of people doing stuff. I saw one recently that they should not be doing in the middle of the street. It's dangerous. And so I'm wondering, is there more we can do to stop it, to move the Kalispell cruise to something that's not what it is today?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in full disclosure, I spoke with Ms. Narduzzi, and she'd asked that same question about petition numbers, and I said, well, there really isn't that number, but it's a community dialogue. And again, we've had this same discussion related to public space, and when there is a violation of public space, what can you look at? So I said, you start that off with that public discussion. So just that disclosure that it was basically an invitation to share if they have, concerns, to share those with the council. If the council wants us to look at things, we certainly can. And I do not know what that would look like and what it may do. Obviously, we've increased enforcement in response to the concerns that came in. I asked Chief Venezio to just give me last 5 Fridays and then last 5 Tuesdays. So we had over 3 times as much enforcement on the Friday night. So police is out there and they are enforcing. And that doesn't count for the addition of Highway Patrol or the Sheriff's Department. So our department is out there with increased enforcement, but sometimes that is a big effort. And, we've actually talked about things. What if you do geometric lane configuration from, various periods, but you're on challenges with that. Because what's going to shift them over to First Avenues where you're already seeing that they're looping around. Moreover, you put traffic control, you're going to have to provide traffic control during all those periods of time. So I don't know if there's a good answer, but if council wants us to contemplate, we certainly can, because again, you're seeing the impact of public spaces used in a way that is impeding and potentially infringing upon the use of that public space for other people. And we've had these discussions before and we've taken actions before on other things, same type of concept. So don't know if we have a good answer, but if council wants us to look at something, we can certainly try.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's a difficult issue to try to address. And like we have in the past, if we can find ideas from other communities, I know cruising is not unique to us. So maybe there's other communities that have addressed it in unique, creative ways that maybe we can borrow from.
I think it's worth a discussion.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was just wondering, I don't know if you know this or not. Does anybody know, like when they're doing burnouts and stuff, is that destructive to the chip seal and everything that we pay to put down? I mean, I know this stuff goes away over time, but.
Yeah, I probably can give you a very educated answer on that at this point. So I'd be hesitant to state it. What I do know is, you have some other implications, whether or not it's destructive to the property. There are potential dangers with that.
Sure, right.
And especially in a downtown area. So, but in terms of, I would be remiss if I just threw out a response of yes, no, maybe. How about maybe?
Maybe.
But like I say, it's something that, I agree, we've heard enough about. Don't know if we'll have any good, solid answers, but we can certainly take a look at that.
Thank you.
Anything else? And I think I'm just gonna even make a comment because it's 10:40 and it's multiple nights in a row and I think I've gotten 4 hours of sleep, so we're adjourned.